Feferity Radio listeners out there. It's a privilege and pleasure for me to be here with you once again. This lovely, crisp and wintry winter's Sunday. A bit cold last night. I know you felt it too. But it's the time of the year, isn't it? We should be happy that it's not as bad as it used to be back in the day, back in 60s. That was really cold. But now, maybe I can handle this. People complaining, but I remember when we were at those levels, and when I was knee-high to a grasshopper, we had to wear holy clothes. But I suppose we're more clothed now, better clothes, better styles, hoodies and red hair, which we didn't have back in the day. So, how you doing? I hope everything is cushy. I hope you realize your goals and dreams. And welcome to Feferity Radio and the Heru Sunday morning show. I have a guest this morning. Not called sister this and sister that, but I don't know. But I might as well do it just for the hell of it. Sista Caprice. And she is well, I'll let her introduce herself. And so we'll be taking you through for a little while and exploring what the sister does, and I know what she does, which is very helpful to our communities, especially our community's psychology, mental well-being. Very important, because we say we suffer from post-traumatic slave syndrome, whether we want to accept it or not, and there's trauma there in every, not just say slavery, but there's trauma generally. And I think it's a good thing to be able to deal with that. No point we're just going on regardless, like nothing's happened. We realize there's something wrong, and some of the symptoms come out in our youths, and our families are really devastated, you know what I mean? So I'm thinking it's good if we can rebuild that platform, rebuild our families, rebuild our minds, our psyches. We can then take on other stuff like politics and religion, whatever you want to take on. But once the repair has been done to the psyche, then I'm sure we can be better placed. Let me rise up Doyle down there and listening in. Also to Steve down there in the Woolwich, Charlton side of things. Rise up your family, Steve. Hope you recover from your ordeal quickly. I hope you're not too bad this morning. Right, and also the rest of the crew that's listening on the WhatsApp group, and also on Heru Amen Facebook. So let me introduce my guest without any more further ado. Right, so Sister, welcome.
Yes, welcome. Grand Risings. So yes, as Heru has mentioned, so a little bit about myself. So I am a complementary therapist. At the moment, I do my complementary therapies, but more on a community scale. So going into, for instance, organisations and companies that are looking to help their staff holistically. So this could be, some people we know suffer from back pain, and other illnesses or ailments that cause them dis-ease whilst at work. And so we try to promote a holistic approach to helping people through their working day. As many of us know, we spend quite a lot of time at work, don't we? So some of the other things that I'm doing at the moment in the community, I work on a voluntary basis for a company called Faces in Focus. Our Faces in Focus is based over there in the Old Kent Road region, and we are a charity that are offering counselling especially to young people aged between 11 and 21. No, sorry, actually 11 and 25. So how that happens is people can self-refer, young people can self-refer, or they can be referred by their elders, their parents, schools, or even their local GP surgery. So I'll be giving you a little bit more info about Faces in Focus and how you can help our charity. Also, I do a few things in the community. So as Heru knows, because he came, didn't you, and performed there, I have a night which is called Essence, which is Bring It to the Mic. And this event is about creating awareness of mental health and well-being. Now, when we mention the term mental health, what I'm trying to do is break down those barriers, because people assume that it means something has to be wrong with you. But what I'm trying to educate people is everybody has mental health. So mental health is brain activity. That's what we call mental health. And so everybody has brain activity, and that can be affected in many ways, intrinsically or extrinsically. So we'll be looking at how that will affect you and how it can affect you and what things you can do to help yourself. Also, I do a little bit of volunteering locally at a mental health institution, which I found very important, very, it was one of those things. I think a friend had mentioned it to me, and, had said, with all the expertise and experience that I have, it'd probably be good to go and take that route. And it definitely has, and it's helped me with a lot of my research into one of my favourite subjects. And I know people would probably think, gosh, that is a subject. But, the subject of our mental health and how trauma affects us. So I know Heru's spoken before about trauma, the post-traumatic slavery syndrome. Today I will be talking about trauma and how it affects us, the different types of trauma, and also what happens when we're traumatized to the body, and also to and sometimes generally a lot of sicknesses are related to trauma and people don't know. Now, for those that don't know, there is a condition that is called PTSD. PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. I was going to say slavery then. We have to we have to be careful with these acronyms, isn't it? And abbreviations. So so in short, trauma is in general can be defined as a psychological or emotional response to an event that deeply distresses or disturbs somebody. Okay, and so this will have an effect. Now, the beautiful thing about this, and I could go on forever, is the fact that when we look at trauma and how it affects us, muscle, all cells within the body. So I was going to go through the systems: muscle, skeletal. All cells within the body have memory, and so when we are traumatized, this is embodied in our bodies. And this is the memory that causes the pain, the disease, the sickness. So not only, through our foods are we taking in toxins, just through our everyday life. And so I'll be sharing a little bit more about that with you in a second. Otherwise, there's a lot of things, on our daily basis that we kind of, go through with regards to trauma. And as I said, we've got different types of trauma, but also the looking at their different areas of trauma. So your childhood trauma, which is probably, I would say, and there's no guarantee, but one of the most traumatizing times to, kind of take in or be subjected to trauma in your early stages. For my research shows that if you are traumatized very much as a young child, and remember, we all respond to trauma in different ways. So I'd just like to say that, because what I might be traumatized by, you might not be traumatized by. The same thing can happen to us, but the experience is different for both of us.
Can I just say, thinking about that, I often travel back in my mind, and maybe now I know that emotional time was a traumatized time, because I did look back at the time when I used to go to childminder. Mum used to take me to a childminder. Yeah. I hated it. Every morning it's like an ordeal. Oh man, people don't understand. that, and also there's other trauma like leaving Jamaica.
Yes,
You know,
definitely.
you know when your parents leave the Caribbean, and there's a song that I love. I'm sad to say I'm on my way. Won't be back for many a day. My heart is down. My head is turning around. I had to leave a little girl in Kingston Town. I often take that song and apply it to my parents. Remember, my father came first in 1950, God knows when, and my mum followed. We came here in 59. So I came in 59. So obviously, so you see how far back my parents came to England. And I thought they'd uprooted themselves from Jamaica and brought us over. So when I was traumatized there as well, because I can remember, I don't remember much about Jamaica, obviously, because I was only 3 when I came. But I do, my mum said when I came, all I was talking about was my aunt. And so I'm thinking, wow, at that time I wasn't conscious that I was trying to tell her things.
I want to go back home to aunts.
Oh, you know what I mean? And then my brother came after. He was traumatized. He was about 11. And he did, no, I lie, he was about 7. And he didn't know that to trick him to get him on the plane.
Wow.
And when he got him on the plane, when he didn't know where, I felt sorry for him because he didn't know where he was. And he thought he was going to go back home in a minute. So when he landed, I can imagine what he was thinking.
Yeah.
And then when he actually got to my house, to our house, he went straight to the garden and started playing marbles. So when come evening now, he's ready to go home now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's ready. He's like looking, well.
Oh my God, for 2 weeks straight, that brother cried. 2 weeks straight.
I'm telling you. And this is what really, when I say it upsets me, but when I take myself to that place, you know, and I think about my mother and some of the stories that she told of, Jamaica, and I always used to feel the empathy, you know, the that trauma there. And I must say, because I am quite an empath in feeling, you know, vibrations and emotions, and I think this is why childhood trauma affects us so much more. Because when I think of being, you know, a small child, and there were some things that have just only recently highlighted in my life, and through having therapy and certain treatment, have highlighted areas of my life that I was too young to very much remember, but I felt it in an emotion which I held on to. And it's quite interesting because when I listened to my mum's friends or elders or family members talk about me as a child, it was very interesting. And almost I felt as though something was almost missing, you know, and I wondered why. And, you know, over the last year or so, I've uncovered that. I won't give you too much, but, you know, I'll be sharing throughout the show why that is. But again, just going back to, you know, being a vibrational being and feeling energies, you know, that undertone of, you know, when a child is so young, they have their senses, but they're not able to speak and communicate in the way that we know. And so they feel it. So if you're in a house or you have a very young child under the age of 3 in the home, and there's a lot of shouting going on, there's a lot of banging and stuff like that, maybe due to domestics, you know, or family breakdowns, that can traumatize a child. Just that alone, that's how minute it is. Because if they're in the cot crying and they're hearing that, all they're thinking is what's happening.
Is it possible to pass trauma down to the fetus?
Definitely. I would definitely say that. And you know, I've forgotten the lady's name now. I really want to mention her name, and I will probably find it in my notes. But the lady, she did a study on the 9/11, and this is why I know, and this is really an epiphany for me, because you know, when I said I felt as though there's something missing. But I'll share an experience, but before I go on, just to speak of this lady, and I will find her name, I'll have a look in a moment. Literally, she did a study after 9/11 to see how post-traumatic stress disorder would affect fetuses, and whether it did. And this is exactly what she did with people that were actually pregnant around the time of 9/11. Yeah. And I think she had a few people, like maybe 20 or more, and basically done a lot of tests on them before and after after their term pregnancy and found that it was true to say that fetuses could be very much stressed in the womb. And I, of course, believe that too. I mean, when we think we're vibrational beings, you could go to a party. I've got a friend. We were recently at an event, and we were playing drums and stuff, and the baby was actually moving to the drum, so to the rhythm. So if a baby hears a voice, now I have one of those voices, a very deep, raspy voice. I get told everywhere I go, "Oh my gosh, are you a singer? Are you this and that?" But literally, when I'm around, and especially with pregnant mothers, I tend to find that they'll go, "Oh, you're talking and the baby's moving," but the baby feels the vibration of a voice. Definitely, light can affect a baby in a
I don't quite sure, but if that's the case,
yeah.
Also, I was looking into it one day. Also, sexual energies.
Yeah.
Now, it is said that recommended by a doctor, which is called Doctor, not Dr. Sabi, the holistic doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot I remember his name later on. And he said that the reason why. And I looked at Jamaica, for instance, and I saw the clip in Jamaica. These kids in school, I don't know if you saw it, children in school, and they were having, they were doing that, gyrating in front of the teacher. And the head tried to stop it.
Yeah.
They got the girls behind. They were doing the thing behind, gyrating sexually. So I'm thinking maybe it's true what the doctor said. Doctor said that sometimes we're oversexed, and that is because we've been told to have sexual intercourse while being pregnant. The holistic doctor said, well, if you have sex whilst you're pregnant, then you'll send in sexual energies to the fetus, and then the child will come out oversexed.
Okay.
So that's why it says. That's why sometimes we're talking about it's useful to have a polygamous relationship.
Yes.
Where when the woman is pregnant, she can rest for a while.
Yes.
She can find, because it's very important. If you say that the fetus can experience trauma, then we've got to be very careful that we create that environment for the child to come out. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think of it in many ways, and I'm no midwife, but I am a female, and then possibly I would say that I know many pregnant women. And I would say in one sense, I believe definitely that it could be traumatizing, because there's having, making love, for instance, if, it's your partner, then evidently, that can be done in so many ways. And I think, yes, as we said, memory. So cells have memory. And obviously being a fetus or a baby, they're going to have feelings or vibrations and so on. So I believe that depends on intention and between a mother and father. And I think that it could be done in a way where there's less impact. But I get that. I'm definitely a believer of that as an energy worker, as someone that believes that the cells have memory, and also that space is a small space. And so I said, there's so many things that you could be doing for pleasure with a pregnant female, instead of, making it maybe a traumatizing experience.
Well, the doctors tell you, go on, mate.
Yeah, and I get that again from a female's perspective. As I said, I haven't been pregnant, but just for the preparing and the opening up and kind of helping, the female to.
I think we have to decide on that one.
Yeah, I think definitely it's a personal thing. I mean, I've never been pregnant, but I would always say no for me. I think it's a resting period, just like we have a resting period every month.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Menopause.
Yeah, and I think. And being mindful, but caressing and foreplay, all that kind of stuff, I think is definitely going to help for bonding, because the baby's on the receiving end as well, and so therefore energy, so touch and things like that. If it's going to make the mother or female feel good, why not? If it's going to help to relax, Some people are, it helps them to relax. So different strokes for different folks.
I think it's the transmission of the energies into the child.
Yes.
Sexual energies, because it's a high energy. Sometimes I think that's a good way to explain maybe the over-sexualizing of children today.
Well, I think we're going to have to ask our parents, can we call?
But then, people who have more than one wife,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to vindicate that, but all I'm saying is that when you have
well,
more than one wife,
and this
I know
is
it's a different subject completely.
It's
but I don't want to go on
subject.
there, but I'm just saying that's where a polygamous relationship would probably go.
And I agree with that.
When the woman's able, because more time, when the woman's had a baby, the man still, he jumps on her straight after she's had a baby 6 months.
Yeah, and that's why you find usually they're pregnant again and again.
She doesn't have a time to repair, because it's trauma. When you enter into the womb like that, it's trauma.
And these are the things that people need to be mindful of in their
So the trauma is the trauma. So I'm glad you mentioned that there are different kinds of trauma.
Yeah, and
we always traumatized. Are we always traumatized?
And this is, definitely. Everyone is traumatized, I think, in the sense that there's different levels of trauma. Now, you speak of trauma with intercourse whilst pregnant, but thinking about the birth itself, that's traumatizing. Do you know what I mean? So it's trauma all the way, because the midwife, I've heard so many stories, pregnant women, it's always a beauty to listen to their stories, and some have it so easy, whereas some have a very traumatizing experience. And again, I believe that this can traumatize. Have you ever seen a woman that's had a really traumatized pregnancy and say, no, I'm not doing that again? And when you say, why not? No. And I'm like, they almost put me off, and I've not had children, And so you have to be mindful of that and understand that. Everyone's trauma is different. And as I said, again, trauma in pregnancy, trauma in birth. You think when a mother is scared or startled while she's pregnant, the fetus is feeling that energy and knowing that something's wrong and terrified of it. So if you say, for instance, in cases of domestic violence where mothers are pregnant and they're being abused or, mentally, physically, the baby will be able to feel that also. Really,
yeah. So if you were trying to interpret it in terms of community and society, and the problem that we have with because everybody handles trauma differently, right?
Yeah.
So how would you recognize a traumatic case then?
So now that can vary again, and I would say based on behaviour and emotions. So I can go from my own experience, because I've been traumatised. I've been affected by post-traumatic slavery syndrome, which has come down from parents. My mother and father exactly the same as you. Having come from Jamaica, my mum was about 15 years old when she came over. So she was quite already settled in her prime, and, she was left there by her mother. And only sent a couple of years later, after my grandmother had resettled. Now, I probably wouldn't, 20 years ago, I had no acknowledgement of what was happening for my mum. But, I was aware of what was happening for me based on my emotions and my behaviour. So I tried to address that in many ways. But, just through communication sometimes, I knew there was a struggle there, trying to communicate with mum on a level and my father on a level, in the sense that there's something, again, I always speak of this something missing, because you notice their intrinsic or their extrinsic behaviour around things, and especially because, we're in a community that is very diverse. So you've got English, you've got Jamaicans, you've got Africans. You notice that people's,
human society is a very funny thing. Obviously different from the animal kingdom. We're not that much different, but maybe there's a tickly subject that I want to touch and I don't really want to touch it, because it just stares me in the face when we're talking about trauma.
Right.
And it's the
And this is another thing. So, you said about those signs. That's
Right.
one of them. I love it. You see how things has come to light in that moment. And again, so for me, the first sign would be the difficulty of speaking about something. So a subject, and most of us could think, let's go for a subject that's quite general for all of us, bereavement. Bereavement is general for all of us because we all lose or have lost somebody. And there is where I speak of, because every other day someone is losing people in their families. I mean, I've had 2 losses recently.
And every other day someone's being born.
Right, exactly.
So we've got to think about the balance.
The balance, but then, they're both traumatising, aren't they? And can be for someone. But again, it's something that for me, I mean, as Heru knows, I mean, my father passed away 16 years ago, and the event was quite traumatic, having to kind of watch him fade away, and
I went to the same school as her father. I know him well. We grew up around the ends here, around this ends.
Yeah, we found out that recently, didn't we?
Yeah. No, the man, know him good.
Yeah, so it was quite an interesting one to, watch that. But then again, as I said, people will feel very hard to speak of their trauma.
Well, I'm going to say this here. It's not really personal to me, but I've heard of people talk about it. And I'm thinking to myself, children, when we speak about like family units, how good they are,
yes,
and how necessary they are, for some children, it's been a horrible experience.
Yeah.
So when we're going on about it, mum, dad, they're thinking, no, it's horrible. Mum did this to me, or dad did that to me. When I was young, my mum used to really give me some whoppings.
Oh, that's the most common one, isn't it?
She used to give me
the beatings.
I don't know where I didn't. I suppose I buried that.
Yeah.
Because my elder brother, he was favoured. He got some, but not as much as me.
Yeah.
And when my younger brother came from Jamaica, he got the whole brunt of it.
So wait a minute, did that mean that you were probably the worst?
Yeah,
because you got more beatings?
I got more than everybody else for some unknown reason. And to the point where I used to write my granny.
Yeah.
And say, help.
Oh, wow.
I remember I penned a little letter.
Yeah.
By the window, on top of that gram, which is called a gram.
Yeah.
And I used to say, Granny, help. Mum's
Wow.
beating me. I don't know if my mum ever found that letter.
Yeah.
I suppose she did. I don't remember what I'd done with that letter, obviously. I was about, 6, 7 times there.
And forgive me because I'm here laughing, but, when we speak of these things, and I'm I laugh and I don't mean to insult you, but, I hear so many people speak of, being beaten. And I have no answer to that, but I was one of those children as well. The difference is I didn't grow in Jamaica. I was here in England, where it's actually illegal now to beat your children. We take it for granted, but some of that beating, definitely, I would say, I deserved. It was provoked in the sense that I knew better, but some of that wasn't. And it's that emotional beating that you get where your parents are responding emotionally to their circumstance, and they're actually, it seems like what we call displacement in counselling, where somebody's upset you and so you kick the cat instead, and that's like beating the child.
Really?
Well, parents, you think a lot of the times when my mum was frustrated with me, it wasn't always because of me. There was something that come up and something hadn't been done or whatever, and it would be taken out on you. I was the oldest child out of 6. So my beatings were coming quite free and regular. But, especially as the oldest child who should be kind of setting an example. And so I was the first child to be traumatised. I needed to set an example. But then the example that was coming down was in firing licks, when you think of it.
What's your opinion then concerning discipline? And do you think, like how we're kind of influenced to think, that when they stop, when they brought this restriction in from punishing your child or hitting your child, do you think, out of the two of them, which you think, do you think it's a good thing that they did that?
Well, yes. I'm going to say yes, definitely, in the sense that I believe children should be disciplined. You can discipline your child without beatings. There is fear. A lot of children are held in through discipline of fear, and that's just through talking. and vibrationally body language, because fear, when you're verbally, talking to someone in a way and changing your tones, that can be intimidating. And there are many, remember, when we're talking about what we call abuse now, is done in many ways. You have verbal abuse, you have physical abuse, you have sexual, you have neglect, you have all of those things. And yes, so these things are very relevant to when we speak of trauma. But the fact that we have reduced beatings, I would definitely say is helpful. Believe me, it isn't the be all and end all, in the sense that some people still having beaten and being challenged in that way now, culturally around the world. And I lived in Jamaica, so I know and I see it, and I've had to prevent children being traumatized there, because for me, discipline is discipline, but what we don't want to do is leave trauma on these children.
So we're sort of passing it on.
Well, of course, it's being passed on, and it's going to affect them when they're older. And I can tell you in many ways how. And as I said earlier, in the childhood trauma, if you are beating and speaking to a child in a way that is going to affect them emotionally, believe me, the child will not develop properly. This affects the mental and the nervous system, and it affects the autoimmune system, being one of the first things that it affects. And it doesn't produce or form in the way that it should. It affects it and it slows down. So you could not develop some of the things that you need. And I'm going to say this, I'm a living, walking experience of that. Now, when I speak of my trauma, I want people to just be mindful and not feel as though I was traumatized, I was abused, but I know many people that have been. And if anyone's out there listening, and you have been, my compassion is with you, and it's not acceptable. But I would say that my trauma was on a minute scale. But then what happened to me, obviously, with the beatings, it was how I responded to it as a child, why it affected me. And I think there was a lot of confusion in my mind growing up about love and about what was supposed to be in the sense of parenting, because I always felt detached and felt, because of the trauma, the beating, and so on, I would always feel, very tearful. And I remember crying a lot as a child, very much, crying a lot.
Yeah. You remember when you used to say, when your stamina tremble? You heard that saying? When your stamina tremble. I mean, I had a lot of that. And I'm thinking to myself, especially my brother, and he actually had a little bit of animosity in his heart. I think he sorted it out, though, when Mum died. But he did sort of feel a little bit. He used to speak to me about it.
Well, I think you would. And this is why we have to be mindful as a nation, as parents, if you're out there listening. Look, I know everybody knows we have everyday struggles. Children do things that they're not supposed to, do things that might be harmful to themselves. And even out of that, you would respond with maybe a lick, just to say, leave it. And I remember many years ago, my goddaughter, her mother, God rest her soul, her mother's passed now. I just remember I had her for a few days, and I kept telling my goddaughter, leave that alone, leave that alone. And my friend would always say, if she tells, you tell her off, and I'd be like, no. But this one day, over and over again, repeatedly, I kept telling her not to go and put her fingers in the plug socket. And just out of, shock and whatever, I gave her a tap, literally just a tap on the back of her hand. But when she looked at me, especially because, one, I wasn't her mother. Two, she doesn't know auntie to do those things because I'm always spoiling her. And three, it was just that shock in that moment. And that is exactly what she needed at that point to get what she wanted. And it had nothing behind it in the sense of, reinforce the idea, but no emotion on it. I was for her safety in that moment. And where I give her that time, I tell you something, she didn't go back to that plug again. She never touched it again.
So you could say it's the overindulgence rather as opposed to actually punishing a child like that.
Yes, but
overindulging.
Yes, but then there's so much different levels to to be in, isn't there? When you think, I know, and I've seen some horrific beatings in my time of children.
On Facebook where the woman had the cutlass. You see that one?
Yeah. See, let me
just
just say this to you, and I feel it in my solar plexus now. So be mindful how you're speaking. And this is the thing about being an energy, right? So for me, and that's the thing, I feel that I have taken in so much trauma as an empath. You know, when I'm around people, I feel that trauma in them. So that's just in a public setting, and it is quite harsh on me, you know, for what I take in, and even as a therapist. So that's why I'm very mindful on the work that I do. And at the moment in this part of my life where I'm dealing with my own trauma and getting healing, I'm not doing my work. I'm not actually doing my work. So hence why you hear me speaking about a lot of voluntary work, doing my research, trying to develop my own program and workshops around trauma. And so, I have to be mindful with myself, because I think trauma can make you very sensitive. It can make you even more vulnerable in certain aspects of life. And that's not for all, because I think having that trauma gave me what I realise now. And it's quite interesting because people would always say, you know, when you speak of a crab, I'm a Cancerian stroke Leo, and people always say, you know, you're like, you know, a crab. I'm hard on the outside and soft on the inside. And that is so true, you know, because I'm only going to want, for me personally, I've been through a traumatic experience, and I know it didn't affected me in many levels, and it's taken, you know, years to unravel that. It was like being an onion, each layer and layer unfolds. And recently now, why I've come about this, you know, is because I've got to a stage where I feel like I've identified an issue, a problem, and hence why I'm going to talk about the PTSD, which is the post-traumatic stress syndrome, and the post-traumatic slavery disorder, and how it affects us. Because believe me, this is something that I have and recently been diagnosed with. And so when we look at trauma, we have different levels of trauma. So we have the acute trauma. So an acute trauma is one single accident or circumstance that's caused you trauma. So say, for instance, you're in a car accident. That's the one. And so then we have what we call, I've just forgotten what we call it, your chronic trauma. Chronic trauma is maybe one or two happenings of this trauma. And then we have what we call multi-complex trauma. Now, that's the one I have, multi-complex. And the reason being is because multi-complex says what it is, multi and complex. It's multi because there's been so many types or occasions, circumstances where trauma has been revisited, and also where it has taken place. And so on top of that old trauma, new trauma's coming in. And even with, say, for instance, bereavements, the revisiting the cycle, so anniversaries and things like that, bring that trauma up again for you. And so this is why it's so complex in that way. And I think from a very young age, I had a bereavement. It was only recently I found out, and I'm going to tell you this because this was quite amazing. I had a therapy called silent therapy. And it's a young man, he's a pioneer of it actually. I do my voluntary work at the organisation, and he done this, what we call, it's a visualisation of going into the subconscious and asking the subconscious, you know, what's going on for you, you know, one word that can sum up everything for you. And I did this visualization. It was amazing. I mean, it took 5 minutes and it unearthed so much. But stuff I had already known and been working through over the last few years. But in that moment, I was able to go back into my subconscious, ask it what was going on, and it came up with this word. And I was like, wow. And I'm going to share that word with you now. And the word was scared. And I'm like, wow, scared? Me? Scared? Scared of what? And it's like, no, I'm not scared, you know. And, you know, when I felt it, in that moment, I felt this vibration come over me. And it was almost like saying, yeah, there is a bit of energy there that's saying scared. I thought I've got to look into it. So he sends me back in. He does hypnosis as well. But this is not hypnosis. It's just visualization.
Okay, right.
But he sends me back in and I go back into the visualization. He tells me now to change that word to the opposite. And, you know, it goes back down into this river of subconscious. And it was amazing the way that it's done, the technique. But I just put safety or safe, yeah?
You changed the word.
You change the word around. And literally, that unearthed so much, because once I finished doing that visualization, I remember I got a photograph of me. And this photograph, this one is really interesting. I've had this photograph since I was age 3. Yeah. Now, I've gone over this photograph so many times, looking at it. If this photo goes missing, I go berserk. I can't find my photo. Where's the photo? And I don't know if it comes from a place of, I don't have many photos of me as a child. Like my father's side of family, you know, had me most of the time when I was much younger. So they boycotted all the family photos. You know, I was the first grandchild on that side. So I was quite a peace prize back in those days. But literally, I would be looking to see this photo and I would just be like, wow. And I could just feel the emotion behind this photo. And there is something called photo therapy, which I'm going to go into as well, because I had that done as well to help me unpin what was going on. But could you imagine, when I came back through that, I unearthed a few things. I've had my favourite number, one of them has always been number 3. And I never knew why that was. I lived at number 3 Kingston Square back in the days. I was so proud because the whole of our estate was named after Caribbean islands. So I'm like, yes, number 3, my favourite number. And we live Kingston Square. So, you know, we're still at home in the Caribbean, you know, living the dream. But literally, going through the photo, I then unearthed that green is my favourite colour. What colour dress was I wearing in that photo? Green. Like an emerald green. Yeah, it's my favourite photo. Well, I'm going to it, but this is it. And then you'd think. Now, I used to say to my aunt, she used to tell me when she told stories about me, and she used to say every time I walked around the house, I'd have this little black handbag, gripping it so tight. And if anybody, they used to tease me, like, come here, come give me the handbag. And I'd be like, no.
You say that. How old were you reckon when you'd had that?
When
you had that handbag?
I was 3 years old. I was the same age that I'm speaking of. So these are loads of different things that came about.
I used to have this mum's purse.
Right. So
and I held on to that. Even the photo of me, I got this purse.
Right. You know that is based on trauma. Now, let me say this to you. At the time, I was holding my little sister in my hand. She had just been born. Her name's Saskia. So she couldn't have been no older than 2 months old. And I remember just the look on my face. It was almost like I was happy. You could have seen me there as a child, cradling a child to protect her. Okay. I was feeling very protective over her.
I know where you're going.
And I still was. And I literally...
That's why I wanted to ask you, but I know where you're going.
When I looked at this photo, I thought, oh my gosh. But my friend and me always looked at this photo and she said to me, you know what, Caprice, something wrong with that, something there, you know. You're going to find out something around that time there. And I'd always be like, you know, I know that. But maybe at the time I weren't ready to deal with it, so I didn't go unearthing it. But recently, after living in Jamaica for a few years and seeing the trauma there in young people and in, you know, as you said, going back and forth from home, you know, leaving the children in Jamaica, migrating, the trauma just based on that alone. But I looked at this photo and I was like, wow. So I phoned my mum. Now, I was generally aware that at that time I had an uncle that had passed away, but he actually passed away before he had committed suicide. What? Yeah, unfortunately, we lost him at a very young age. He was 17 years old. And we were at my grand's house on that day. That's where I was there with my little sister holding her. So I came up with this. Around that time, I think everybody would have been highly traumatized or very upset about what had taken place. And I know that there was a bit of dysfunction within the family based on my mum having me at a young age. So she wasn't living at home with her parents and stuff like that. But when my uncle obviously passed away, we were in the family setting at home. And I think I felt a lot of that trauma, a lot of that disconnect that they had. And I think it really affected me because even at the time when everyone was dealing with it, and especially like my mum and that, I think they wouldn't have had the patience. Now, we also had a new baby in the family. And I remember my mum sometimes saying to me, boy, you know, I say, I know something wrong with you. And I'd be like, why'd you say that? Because you don't keep still. Every minute, you know, I'm moving up and down. And I have literally done that a lot through my life. I've moved in
Can't
so
keep
many
still.
different homes.
Oh.
I can't keep still. I've travelled abroad and lived. Do you know what I mean? And people would be like, gosh, you don't keep still, do you? I would say, well, I don't have to because I haven't got kids, you know, or children. So that's one reason I can be free. But yes, that was part of my trauma. Anytime I felt traumatized or I felt to this, you know, I've got to just do so, I would go and I'd move. I'd move as thinking that this was a new beginning. But what I didn't realise is that actual moving was causing me trauma too.
Yeah.
It's really complex. It's very complex. And that's
Really?
why I speak of complex, you know, multi-complex trauma.
Funny enough, I live in one place for 43 years.
43 years.
40, I'm at my flat.
Wow.
43.
I'm well
I've never
jealous
moved.
because that sounds so settling. I feel unsettled. That sounds a bit too settling that it's making me feel unsettled. I'm
Serious.
telling
I've
you.
never moved from that spot where I've been
Wow.
from Peckham.
And
45.
I like that. It's nice when you hear that. I mean, I was almost traumatized by the fact that when my grandmother passed away, she lived in the Brixton Road area, Hayter Road. And I just love that area.
Oh, but nice,
and when
yeah.
my grandma passed away, as much as, you know, she had a house that was paid for, one of those flats that were paid for, they would come in at a good price.
yeah.
I was traumatized that that house was taken away from us in our family because it was the meeting point, the center point for everyone to connect. So even if you didn't talk to one another or you didn't see one another, you turn up. You turn up. Well, I know because my mum used to go to Nuffshall Beans.
Up Hayter Road, yeah.
Yeah, Hayter Road. Evelyn House, my grandmother used to live. Yeah, Hayter Road was one of like the famous roads back then. Nice.
Actually, that's where you know, the rebels in Brixton.
Yes, did start out.
Yeah, thing up there, and Linz and John Sequazi made a record about the night at Hayter Road where my man got his throat cut and all that.
Okay.
Left in the gutter.
Yes,
Leroy, yeah. I mean, and them thing there. So it's history in it.
Yeah, it's history.
It's definitely growing up into that environment there.
Exactly, and that's why when you speak of post-traumatic slavery syndrome,
Look at that.
right?
How far can you go back?
Definitely, because I've seen it in my parents. I mean, recently I remember, you know, going to my mum's and seeing her with these forms there, and I thought I felt very traumatized by seeing the forms actually. Yes, you get in my way.
It's good to understand parents because I've never really tried to understand my mum or my
Do
father.
we have to understand
I
them?
think we do, really.
Well, we
For
have to
ourselves.
understand what's happened to them in a process. Now, believe, and this is how it's easy because you're having your own experience. Now, my mum, I knew something was going on for my mum, and I could assume, I know from, you know, a young child that this has affected her. You know, and maybe back then I weren't seeing it as trauma, because when we speak of trauma, people think it has to be something that's so violent, or no, it's as much as being shouted at and feeling away for it, because then the emotions play out, and what happens then, you've got all of these chemical releases that happen in the body. So the endorphins, the different hormones going through the the serotonin that is let off in the body, and all of this acts as a memory. So again, it's stored in the body cells. So therefore, it can be triggered at any time. Now, every time, so you know the fight, flight, or freeze?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Fight or flight.
Fight or flight, freeze, yeah?
Yes.
So this is incorporated into that. So every experience you have, because remember, when you're having an experience of trauma, you're going to do one of those, aren't you?
Yeah. One or the other.
You're right, one or the other.
Fight or you're going to take off.
Right, or freeze. And this is where that impacts and embeds into
Right, I don't
you
talk
again.
about that because I've studied a bit on the brain, and I know how the hypothalamus.
Well, there you go.
and-
That's my
and-
favourite word, and that was
and
what
the
coming next.
Reptilian.
Yeah, the hypothalamus.
Yeah,
And, you know,
the prefrontal lobe. But let me give out the hotline numbers just in case anyone wants to join us. You're in tune to listening to Feferity Radio. Your host Heru, alongside Caprice, who is a
complimentary therapist.
right.
And,
So if you want to call us, you can call us on 0730 541 7668, and I repeat, 0730 541 667-668. You can also text us on that number if you want to contribute to the discussion going on this morning. Feel free to. Yes. So again, but we're programmed for survival, right?
Yes, we are. But as we say, when we think of how the body responds to this same fight, flight, or freeze, this is what determines. We can't say how we'll respond. We don't know. It's how in that moment, in that time, space, reality. So it's hard to prepare yourself.
Yeah, but you say that. But there's another part of the brain called the amygdala.
Yes.
Which records actions when we were in the bush or in prehistoric times. Well, that's we learned.
Memory.
We learned certain movements to deal with like wild animals. We learn how to avoid them. We learn how, so that's recorded in that part of the brain. So if it ever needs,
but we're not doing that type of stuff now, are we? We're doing different things that are more or non-conducive to our lifestyles, stuff that we're not used to doing. And even though maybe hereditary, that memory is stored there, yes, it comes in use. And I think this is why we go into survival if we're feeling a certain type of way, fight or flight.
Would you like to call back, caller? I didn't get to the phone in time, so you can call back whoever's calling there. And I do believe, right on. Good morning. One sec.
So, let me just speak of some of the things.
One sec, caller, we'll be setting you up.
That also holds you in a place because, as I said, when body has memory, just like mind, it holds on to that.
Okay.
And so then you're living through in that space, but with triggers. So it's almost like NLP, so neuro-linguistic programming. And when you think we have anchors, these are what we call the anchors, and those would be deep-rooted, deep-bedded. And then we have triggers, so certain things that would remind us of that occasion or time where, sound, sight, feelings, smells, thoughts would bring that up again.
Right. Okay, call up. Good morning, how you doing?
Oh, hi, Heru. I'm Burchak.
Hi, Burchak, how you doing?
I'm fine. Can I be heard loud and clear?
Loud and clear.
Okay. I was going to ask you about, the Sister Caprice, is it?
Sister Caprice, yes.
Yeah, about the mental health side of things.
Okay, yeah.
The mental health...
before you start your question, let me pass over the... The headphones so she can hear you at the moment. So you can start your questioning again.
Hello. Grand Rising.
Sister Caprice. I'm Burchak, a Turkish listener since to community radio.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask you the questions. Only a few, and then I'll go anyway.
Okay.
I've had mental health since I was diagnosed in 2000 and basically 2000, the year 2000.
Okay, millennium, yeah.
And I was in the mostly section, diagnosed.
Okay.
I've never been sectioned. I've never had a criminal record of thing.
Yeah.
But the mental health side of things, for example, now a different kind of cancer then.
Yeah.
Now, basically, when a person comes up to you and says, I have dark black thoughts, years ago, psychologists, when I used to say some things, which I will not say in there, but I had very dark and black thoughts, like dark things, doing this, doing that. Basically, they would stop. They would not report me straight away to safeguarding.
Okay.
However, now, I don't know whether now you do things differently, or if it comes in a different situation, would you have to report it to safeguarding? That's my first question. Because some people don't have a mom and dad, and whether the police would get involved. Because I know that the police would deal with children very badly. So that's my question. First question.
Okay, so first question, as a member of society, we have we have to safeguard children. So it's our responsibility. If we know anywhere in the world that a child is being abused, then we need to bring it to the attention of the authorities. And this is something that in different, in work. So, for instance, if you're maybe working in social care, you're working in maybe children's homes, or you're working even as a counsellor, counselling young people, if a certain thing is disclosed where that child's hasn't been safeguarded and is being abused, then we have to report it. And I think, yes, it's very important to report that so that, one, it can stop and they can engage. Now, really, how the police respond to that, I mean, the police is like, I see the police like a general practitioner. There's only so much they know and there's only so much they can do. So they're there to prevent the law, right? Prevent and uphold the laws of, So there is only so much they can do because they don't specialise in working with children. There are some sections of them that do, obviously, for the children that have been abused, for when they're questioning and so on. They have to have a certain level of training. And that is the thing. It's about creating awareness. And for me, and what I'm doing is trying to create awareness around trauma, how it's affected, so we can minimise the impact of trauma as best as we can, just with our own knowledge and with our own experiences. Because one thing I do know is that we would have had an experience that's been traumatic that we can all speak of that has affected us.
Yeah.
And through that, for me, there is healing through many therapies. So one of them is a talking therapy, which is counselling. And there are other therapies like complementary, where you can just, engage in a treatment that helps you to relax, that helps you to overcome some of that trauma. But as Freud would say, the psychoanalytic side of counselling would say you need to get to the root of the core of the seed of whatever it is troubling you, whether it be trauma or distress and so on. Whereas the humanistic school believe that actually we stay in the here and now. We don't dig up that's in the past. We deal with it in the here and now, without having to talk or go back to that past event. I'm a believer that holistically there is 3 parts of us: mind, body and soul, and we're having to heal all of those different elements or ailments within those systems. So I'm hoping that answers your question. The police are not fully equipped, and I understand that when you said you hadn't been sectioned and so on, and you have suffered with mental health. Now, would you say, and me asking you a question, would you say some of that that mental health may have been caused, or have you been subjected? Would you say you've been subjected to trauma at a young age?
No, never ever.
Okay.
And I tell you why, because I have, I hope this is clear, I have a lovely, lovely mom.
Yes.
I love her to bits.
Good.
And I love her. I always cuddle her and say that she's okay.
Yeah.
I love my mom to pieces. I love her so much that if something happened to her, I will feel all on my own. With my mom, she did the cancelling side of things.
Yes.
And my mom, to me, when I used to say things like I had black thoughts and some things that I used to say to the college tutors, that I would do this and X, Y, and Z and all that.
Yes.
However, basically, the psychologists at that time, they would write it in the report, but they would not go to the police. But nowadays, if someone is not subjected to abuse and never been subjected, but has a lovely mom like me, that says, I have got these dark black thoughts, doing this, doing that,
and I was going to say,
doing that.
So with this, now, your diagnosis, obviously what I should have asked is what your diagnosis was first, because it sounds like to me
mild autism.
Mild autism.
They called it mild autism.
Okay.
And learning disability plus.
Yes.
Sometimes they called it, I was also diagnosed with an anger problem, a very short temper anger problem. And the things I said towards the police on Facebook, however, they have come so many times they kept coming into the place, coming out, coming in, coming out. Even neighbours were saying, "Is this like they were becoming thing by it?" And basically, however, they had said that the last time they came, my mom said, please, Burchak has this kind of problem. Please just allow him. They were specially trained ambulance police.
Yes.
And they weren't going to section me, but they were just going to have a very hard word with me. And they said the last thing, they said that if we come again, we're going to ask Burchak to pay for us come.
Oh, wow. They're going to actually charge you.
I think this is what I've charged to, because they said that, look, we can't be equipped to be everywhere at the same. But what it was a hotline that I was phoning, and it was recorded for training.
Yeah, and can I ask, why were you phoning? Was you phoning for help or support at the time?
I was phoning because I was in
a crisis.
Sometimes I feel crisis.
Yeah. Now, look, and I will say this, Bo, everyone has or faces crisis. Now, this is the reason why. Now, and you've got to be mindful of this, because I know I'm being mindful of this because I know that you've had your experience, and your experience could have been somewhat distressing for you. Now, the fact that you've disclosed that you have a learning disability and autism, which I know a small bit about because I worked for an organisation that, had a school for children that were autistic, had ADHD, Asperger's. And so I work quite closely with them with that. And we're speaking of a different type of mental health here, not based on trauma, as you said, because you never experienced any trauma. So we're talking about a defect, a genetic defect. We're talking about something that has affected you from a young age, and this is usually through development of fetus and so on. And I would say it's very different, and police and other institutions do not overstand as much as they should. Now, we know we have schools that separate children with Asperger's and autism, don't they? They separate them and send them to, we have special ed schools, okay? Again, I used to work for them. So sometimes it's not until quite late in a child's life that they notice or recognise their autism and so on. I have a nephew, and I've felt that he has autism, and it's something that he's recently been tested for, but they've said no. But then I remember a friend of mine, and their brother wasn't diagnosed till he was about 13, 14. By that time, it was quite late. Again, the police do not have the special or they do not have the specific training and stuff, to be able to deal with somebody like yourself. At the moment, I know that NHS are working very close with people in the public that have been affected by mental health themselves, to train them as like a kind of what could we call them, officer or steward for mental health, and to support the police in that transition of when they are being arrested. And what they are being mindful of now is, making less arrests when people have mental health issues, unless they are violent or they are of harm to themselves or to others. So there's certain risk assessments and things that they have to put in place. And I know this is something that can be very challenging for both parties, because obviously people are wanting the best to keep people safe, because we know that, some people might mention, things that have happened in the community, especially where people have been affected by mental health and they've been in the community and maybe committed acts of crime and so on that affect other people in the community. So remember, the police are there to protect and prevent, so we have to be mindful of that. But making sure that NHS and places that deal with individuals with mental health do have the extra support and training to be able to help. I remember seeing a young girl recently, and I remember hearing her speak on the bus, and she's a school child, and she was constantly speaking of doing violent acts on people as she was coming into the Brixton area on a bus. And I was sitting there listening to her, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is so sad. But at the same time, it didn't seem right to me. And then a few weeks later, I've seen that same girl ballistically having a crisis in the street, but she was being arrested at the same time by the police. And I just felt, so, traumatized in watching that, because I know by just listening to her that something is not quite right and she needs the extra support and care. Before, every time I saw her in the community, she was like the smallest person with the loudest mouth and, saying some things that just didn't suit her. But a cry for help. And this is often the case. And I thought to myself, this young lady could have faced some real bad trauma and she's acting out, because this is something that, again, many young people will do. Any young person that you know that is getting excluded from school regular, who is maybe not disengaged, and also criminal activities, partaking in criminal activities. Did you know partaking in criminal activities is also a form of trauma, because it is the adverse effect of being in trauma. So you'll go out and commit crimes and do things just because you've been traumatized. So it is a cry for help. I can speak. Yes, go ahead.
Before I go, I'm going to ask you one last question.
Yes.
Have you heard of something like this on any news? Because, like, I heard, for example, the boys in the pub. Yeah, he's autistic, right?
Yes.
He's a normal off-duty policeman, or he's in duty, but policemen are humans as well.
Yes.
He's having a very bad day. He's had a very bad day. He's in the pub, and this boy, there's this person who like a footballer who's been like registered as a paedophile, and he said to the policeman that he knows that, but the boy is autistic, and he said that we should actually have him on the field. We should actually have him to Man City. Yeah. And this is in London. Yeah, he's a Man City supporter, the policeman gets up, and he says, "What are you saying?" And he keeps saying the same thing. And he got so aggressive, the police this time hits the boy very hard, and he's angered there, and he hits him again. And the boy starts to restrain and starts to hit him back, and then there comes a fight where he calls his buddies in. The police gets very upset, and he injures the boy very badly. And they diagnose the boy as autistic, but he's very severely injured. Yeah, because the police are humans as well.
Yeah.
Have you heard? And then the boy has very bad injuries. And basically the police have got off. The policeman has got off. And the boy is in very bad injury. And however, the mum is upset. And the boy later on in hospital had died. Have you heard of a case like that?
No.
And if you heard of a case like that? Because I believe that some things, police are humans as well. And I'm very scared of myself that sometimes when I have a confrontation, I get scared of the police now because I love them, but sometimes if I have a confrontation with them or what I say, the police can be like, they might not betray, and they might like hit me, or I could like very angrily, because it happens in the bill when the man was like the police.
Well, I would say,
well, if there was a case like that,
if I'm honest,
I like it.
I would definitely say this to you, because it seems like for the incident taking place, it seems like you seem a little bit maybe traumatized by that experience, knowing that, and now
I've not had that experience.
No, but you're worrying yourself maybe possibly about what if that may to happen to you, because what you're saying to me, or what I believe you're saying to me, is because the police are not aware of people with autism. Because, I mean, there's no way of telling, isn't it? I know many autistic people. There is no way of telling unless you're with them, that you're having a conversation, or you're in their presence. Then you can, they may be able to tell by signs and so on. Now, the police wouldn't be able to do that either. Only someone that's worked with people that are autistic can do that, and others, But they don't have the time to make that discretionary, assumption in that moment. So I think for you, and what you could do for yourself to make yourself more safe and aware, and I am not sure, correct me if I'm right, I'm not sure if autistic people have badges or something that they can wear that could identify themselves as being autistic. I'm not so sure. So maybe the Autistic Society, like a badge or something, would be a good way of identifying, that you have autism, and definitely letting the police know if you are confronted by the police at any time, just say that to them in the first instance. Sir, officer, can I just let you know I am autistic. I'm a registered autistic. So they have an idea. They may have family members or someone or some level of, experience of autism. So they can say, okay, that means we have to deal with this person slightly different. And I think it's down to each individual, even though I know not every person with autism is able to do that. But if we can, then it makes it easier to kind of break down those barriers and say, look, sir, I have autism. I'm happy to talk to you, but I'm just letting you know I'm autistic and so on. And I think they will respect you for letting them know, and then hopefully take a different approach. And if they didn't then we know that's what we got, hopefully the system for to help us prevent things like this happening. So thank you very much.
Training the public.
Well, exactly, and training the public. And this is why I think it's so important for us to talk about things like this on radio, share things like this on social media, and just ensure we're creating that awareness and breaking down those stereotypes as well is another thing. Because, people, many people have different views about police. I'm one of these people that, the police are there, they serve a purpose, they're doing a job, but we have to educate them. Remember, we're educating them as much as they're protecting and serving, because every case that they have is a different case. And so they learn from us, not the other way around. But what we do need to do is, if we're mindful and we can break down those barriers and stereotypes of the police for ourselves, then we can see them as a more helpful thing. And then maybe we can definitely get that training for them, or get those officers out there with them helping people with mental health. Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
All right. We're going to take a break now.
Yeah, he's gone. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break now. Give Sister time to get a little beverage. That's quite interesting. Thank you very much, Bird Track. Remember, you're in tune to Feferity Radio. You're listening to Heru and Caprice. This is your nostalgic station. Just give out numbers one more time before I log off. 073 05 41 7668. And I repeat, 0730 541 7668. I'll see you after the break.
It's time to set the record straight. All day, every day, playing your favorite songs. This is Feferity Radio.
Okay. After that little break, we're back in tune with Feferity Radio. Your host, Heru, alongside Caprice. And let me rise up Freestyle, engineer and technician. Thank him for his hospitality. And so we had an interesting morning so far, talking about community health, collective health, I think, more or less, collective consciousness, and how I'm sure Sister's going to give you, Caprice is going to give you the solutions and the methods that you can employ to help yourself. This is one thing to highlight the thing, but I'm sure she have methods that we can collectively together rebuild our collective consciousness and collective psyche, and heal that, so we can move forward and maybe understand some of the actions and behaviors of our young children, to understand maybe as Sister said, the autism that's not really notified or recognized, and when police take our children, they don't have any understanding of themselves, and that's how they end up being killed, deaths in cells, and young youths being murdered, shot by police because they thought that they were violent. They were just trying to get some help here. So it's all towards psychological understanding and development. But one thing I want to ask you, Caprice, you mentioned there was the humanist group. And what's the other group?
So humanistic and psychodynamic.
Right, so are they two different groups?
Yeah, they do. So when we talk of, when we talk of counselling, you've got many different ideologies. The main ones are humanistic approach, the school of humanistic, and then you have the psychoanalytic, which is Freud. Then you have existentialism. You have a few different schools. So when we speak of Freud, we're talking about the psychoanalytical approach to counselling, which means going deep beneath the surface, under those layers, and digging up, bringing up whatever's there.
It's the humanists that don't really deal.
Yeah, they don't deal with the past. They stay in the here and now. So they're more like, you don't have to talk about that. They'll keep you in the present moment.
So what's your opinion on it?
My opinion is that when I was going through university, I couldn't take Freud. So I got to explain to you why. And it is a beautiful thing. You know, one thing I tell you with my learning and experience in life, I've had a very challenging life, but what I can say is it is very interesting to turn around and be able to be as reflective as I am now with it. And that's just because of my understanding of myself, my mind, and my own body. That tells a story of these trials and tribulations. So that's why I think it is good to share, because we can all learn from each other. But when I was at uni, and this is one of the conditions or the signs of my PTSD, so which is, for those that don't know, post-traumatic stress disorder. I noticed I was at university studying. I was in my second year. And at that point, I was going, oh my gosh, why Freud's doing this? And why is Freud doing that? I don't want to hear about that. Because it's there. And it's like I said, most people that faced with trauma and have to deal with trauma don't want to talk about it. It's the rejection, because you've had the trauma for so long, and what you've done is consoled yourself. Yeah, you've buried it. And you've soothed yourself, telling yourself, it's okay, it's all right, don't worry about it, you're going to get on. And I've got a term that I say, my depression is my motivation. It's what motivates me to do things. So that was a hindrance in keeping myself busy so I wouldn't have to deal with my trauma.
Really?
Well, yeah, and that's me being honest. But, I've recently come to those realizations going through the whole trauma experience.
Okay.
And so, I would say...
go on.
I think I've lost my train.
Sorry about that, but I just wanted to catch you up on that certain point, because the humanistic group and the... What's the other group?
Psychodynamic. Yeah.
Now, where are we as a community, as a collective psychology rather than an individual? Because there's also the collective psyche in it.
Yeah.
So if we collectively, we call ourselves diaspora, right? So what are we doing now? Are we not demarcating some situation to say, if we're, I don't know who called us the diasporians, but...
I was wondering that recently too.
The diaspora.
Because we use the term so flippantly.
Yeah, we don't even understand what the term is.
Well, can you explain what is that term?
Yeah, so I know that the diaspora, it's all right for us as a group to think, to label ourselves as such, but it's not even us that really matters. It's what Africa labels us as. You know what I'm saying? Because the reason why I say that, we could be saying we're this, but Africa said, no, they're looking at us and saying, no way, you're not that. We could be saying that we are African.
Yes.
And the Africans themselves looking at us and say, hardly so. All right, you're black. But I've seen...
And I think you can definitely, and I agree with you to some extent, definitely there. But I don't think it's for anyone to say what our experience is as Caribbeans, diaspora, African heritage.
Yeah, but this is what we call ourselves in African.
Yeah, I don't really use that term as much as most of the black people in Brixton.
Right, and some of these little fringe groups, liberation groups going around and telling, and I think playing on people's emotions still, because what you're saying, if the trauma is that deep, giving ourselves labels and tags.
Well, you've got to remember, when we're talking about trauma, first of all, let's just take a step back. Because when we're talking about trauma based on diaspora, whose trauma is it? I mean, it's our trauma only because our parents were traumatized, that they're still got certain attributes of them or things that they're doing that has fed down. And then from that slavery or that time, because none of us were there.
No,
we weren't there.
This is the funny thing.
Right, none of us were there.
But as you said, it's you heard of Dr. Gray?
I believe so.
Generational trauma. She talks about generational trauma.
Generational trauma, but generational trauma is different from slavery trauma, right?
No, she's saying.
She's saying it's the same.
Yeah,
okay.
she's saying that.
And
as you said, we weren't there. So how the hell?
And this is what I'm saying, because I haven't done as much. I'm going to be honest. I haven't done as much research into that, but I'm aware of it, and I know it takes place based on trauma itself. So it depends on where we're coming from in that way. Well, none of us were there, and I've decided, over recent years, I want to separate myself from that in a sense that I understand that and I know that it was happened. But you see the pain and whatever it bears from ancestral lineage, it wasn't me. I weren't there.
That's right.
So why am I putting myself through that trauma? I wasn't there.
That's the key thing. That's why I can't understand.
And I'm tired of it now because it is exhausting and everything else. But yes, stressful. We have to be mindful. And we know that our ancestors went through hell and back. Yeah,
doesn't mean we got to go through that.
Well, exactly. Moving on, and you're thinking about healing. We're looking at what are the therapies and things that we can put in place to heal our nation, because we know it's deep rooted. We know it's cellular. It comes through our cells. It comes through fetuses. We know for energy. So the only way that we can turn that around is to do the opposite, yin and yang.
Well, this is what I'm trying to say. Because, but then for some groups, they specialize in keeping us traumatized in order to push their program through.
I believe I believe so, and I don't feel we need to be in that place as Nubians. It's we've carried that for us for ages. Those shackles, that this and that. I'm not putting myself through that anymore. I stopped a long time ago.
40 years on now, we've been having these little fringe groups. Under the minority, 1.3 million blacks are here in Europe. And out of the 1.3 million blacks, you only have a little handful. So I asked the question, where are the 1.3 million blacks? What are they doing?
Yeah.
Obviously, they're not all focused in slavery. No. I mean, on a march.
Well, when I see black people out there on a daily basis, Nubians, I don't see them acting like slaves.
This is what I'm saying. Where are they? What are they doing? I would like to encourage people more to say a bit more. Those because they're in Parliament. I see a lot of blacks in Parliament.
Yes.
I see a lot of black people in high positions today.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, don't. And I would say, don't be fooled by that. There's something I can touch on there.
Yeah, but I know. This is the same thing. I want to touch on that as well. Let me give out numbers one more time. Numbers are 0730 541 7668, and I repeat 0730 541 7668. You're in tune to Feferity Radio alongside Heru and Caprice. Now, the reason why I want to touch on that, because when you say to me, don't be fooled by that, I think if we're talking about healing here, because we can point out the thing all day long, innit?
Yes.
We know where we are in terms of our position, and obviously we'll speak more about that. But in terms of healing, for me not to see a success or we haven't made any progress would be a defeat. And also would be a lie. You understand? Yeah. I know that there's not loads of us in key positions today, but do we really expect to be in key positions if we're in a society as multiracial and multicultural as this one? We can't be expected to be handed it on a plate because we were traumatized some years ago. Haven't we got to work our way up there? Even against racism, against all of the isms and schisms that they're around, we can't expect to be given a free hand. If we know that they're racist, there's nothing we can do about that. That's their inner feelings towards us. So we understand that. We know that there are racisms, whether it's individual, institutional. We understand that nothing we do can change that feelings, their feelings towards us, because they have reasons to feel that way. As far as they're concerned.
What reason?
Here's a reason. Here's a reason now that we're black, and they are not. They look at our history. When we ruled them,
yes.
What did we do to them?
Well, I don't know.
Well, they are saying because we never looked at that. When we ruled Europe, we took away their things.
Yeah.
We took away their gods. We took away everything they had.
Yeah.
And we gave them our thing. That's why when Alexander the Great came to Africa, he was shocked to see all the gods that he grew up with. In Africa. He said, "Well, hang on a minute."
Yeah.
But isn't it the same gods that was I grew up with? So these people are definitely.
Yeah. Well, I think we can say some part. There's a lot of confusion, and I think when something is as old as slavery,
that's what
I mean. There is going to be a lot. You think about it over time. With anything, people should heal. The body heals, and it is naturally a healer. It regenerates organs, tissues, and all that stuff.
But we stop it when it comes to healing the mind.
Right. But with the mind, well, it can prevent it because it depends on what you've got in your mind. So if you've got a lot of stuff in your mind that's causing you stress and is negative in that sense, well, that's where disease comes from. And that's why it's important to let go of those stresses. There's when you speak of generations, different generations are traumatized in different way. I mean, look at the generation now. I mean, they're all traumatized by social media, and they're so traumatized by all these devices and these tablets and all that. Well, it's only going to be a matter of years before you're finding out that all of these devices and things have caused trauma. Because another thing, I mean, I don't hold my mobile phone to my head. I won't, because I know the effects it has on the cranium with all of these frequencies that it emits. And so therefore, you think this nation here and this generation will be traumatized by something else.
Yeah, true.
So they'll have something else to be talking about. Whereas slavery, many generations have gone through that. And I think for many years, I felt we're getting to a point where we're not talking about it as much, but we're talking about what we want as reparation for it. That's right. And you can pay me from having an accident. You can pay me for having an accident or something like that. But you cannot really pay me for trauma. I mean, for compensation based on something, a loss of something financial, whether it's your home or whatever. But when you're talking about trauma, how can you compensate me for my trauma? I mean, it's being done on a daily basis. If you have a car accident, if you have an incident, whereby you're neglected and you're traumatized and further made to be ill. But
what about Jews?
Well, that's a very sensitive subject. I'm not sure I actually want to go there. That's why.
I know what you mean.
I think for me,
I understand. Yeah.
Well, they were compensated, weren't they?
By who? Not by any black people.
Well, definitely weren't me. It wasn't me.
So if they were compensated by their own...
Well, and this is what I think, how do we, decide who should get compensated?
Or pays compensation.
You listen, they couldn't compensate me for slavery even if they tried. Because all they would have to do, they'd have to give me back everything that belonged to Africa. That ain't going to happen. And they need to leave. The Caribbean and African countries alone, because I couldn't just call for Africa because I wasn't born there. You know what I mean? We call about diaspora Africans. I weren't born in Africa. You go and put me in Africa now, I'll probably be lost. I mean, you could put me in a place. I know many places where Jamaicans or Caribbeans have gone and resided. And that's great. I'll go and live with them. But otherwise, me saying I'm African is not a true statement. I'm a diaspora African. I'm not an African.
A historical African.
Yeah, historical African.
So this is what I'm saying. When we talk
I don't have a native tongue, so I can't be an African.
Well, this is what I'm saying. But yet people are being told... It's only a minority anyway, so we're not really worried about the minor. But the majority of the 1.3 blacks, obviously, they've dealt with whatever they needed to deal with, and they're getting on. To say that we haven't progressed in 50 years or maybe 60 years now would not be true.
Well, I don't know, because are we under the disillusion that we have moved further forward?
Why is it a disillusion? I mean, let's put it this way. When I came to this country first, we couldn't even walk on the streets, brethren.
Well, okay, when you're coming from that perspective.
When we come here, it was like, go back home, you blacks. So big marks, NF on the street. I'll kill you. I'll get out of it, you Negro.
And then how has that affected you? Because again, trauma.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. I mean, I've seen it. We've actually been attacked by, when we moved to Brixton first, round at the bottom there. Yeah. We were attacked by white boy. Me and my brother walking to Mansfield Park.
Right, yeah.
And look at the place now. It's bare black round
Well,
there.
yeah.
But them days, in the 60s,
That must have been hard.
Still have pockets of little.
Yeah.
Even in Brixton, Stockwell was a
I'm
place.
not used to hearing about the 60s. I'm probably used to hearing about the 80s and the
So
70s
in
and
the
80s.
60s,
I can imagine.
Stockwell and Wandsworth Road.
It was all, predominantly
You
Caucasian.
can't walk down there, brethren.
Listen, I just found a book at the hospital where I work. I found a book and it's called Lambeth.
Yeah.
Something Lambeth, living in Lambeth. But it's from the 70s.
Yeah,
I should have actually took it out. Next time I'll bring it. But you've got pictures of Lambeth, and what's quite interesting is all the pictures in there Caucasian people. On the cobbled streets. Well, I knew that because Vauxhall was quite predominantly NF.
Yes.
And all those areas, and I'm not even from that area. I just hear a lot of stories. But it was quite funny because when I was flicking through the pictures and I flicked until I got to a page and it said Mitesfield Estate, and all you could see was bare Nubians sitting on the sheds, the walls of the sheds and that. I thought it was hilarious. But, very authentic.
Coming from where
because
you're
no matter
from.
what, they still had to get a picture of us in that book.
Right.
Yeah, because otherwise it wouldn't have been Lambeth
without
a few Nubians.
That's why Brixton now has been able to gentrify. Because of what our hard work, what we put in when we come here. When I come on Somerleyton Road first, Somerleyton Road was at these big houses on there, about 5 floors, basement and everything in there. You know what I mean? And everybody lived. We had Africans and Jamaican living in the same building.
Yes.
In the bathroom, right? Then we used to queue up for the bathroom in our brethren. And we had no central heating. We had coal fire. We had paraffin, right? And those are the times I'm talking about when we were still fighting literally hand to hand. Remember North London?
And
they did a documentary on telly about this thing, and it said that truckloads from Brixton, night after night, truckloads from Brixton went down, van loads went down to visit Notting Hill to help the brothers down there.
Down there, yeah. Well, listen, everyone's experience is different, because I know that for you, you've said definitely we've come a long way, and I think we have, because we can't tolerate those things on the street anymore, and they're not happening in one sense. But let me tell you something. It's very, very misleading in that sense to feel that it has resolved or sorted itself out, because I have lived in Lambeth for most of my life, and there has been some great changes, and the gentrification that we speak of here, believe me it hasn't solved itself, and it's not healed. There is still those battles going on, even while all the money is making the place look so nice, as it does, because we've always got a distraction. Instead of dealing with racism and the problems that we've had through slavery, they've not dealt with them. There's nothing in place to say, what is your treatment? How are we overcoming this? Wow. There's no plan in place. That's right. And so therefore it hasn't been healed. But I was walking around Brixton yesterday, and as much as it seems very cultural and diverse, I mean, I felt a certain kind of way, because I've got certain type of people giving me dirty looks and all of this. And it's not almost about race. It's a class thing now. Of course, yeah. I'm tired. I'm exhausted of it. Do you know what I mean? And this is the thing that we're constantly subjected to, why there is no healing going on. There's still that animosity in place, in the sense that, oh, look at you, this is my home. This is where we're supposed to be. And now you've got people that are paying for it, and they have that. Yes, they want to come and embrace our culture. Yes, they want to enjoy, all the different foods of the world and whatever, but they're still ignorant in the sense of
whose fault
mindset.
Is that?
It's our government. I mean,
right.
For me personally, it's everyone's fault on a whole, as a community, and also with those that empower, the powers that be, because there has been nothing implemented to help heal the wounds. For me, I love the activist Jane Elliott. I'm not sure if you know of Jane Elliott. She's a lovely Caucasian lady who lives in America and speaks very much of racism and how it affects both of our people. But she speaks of a term, knowing that, she's come from black people as a Caucasian woman, and explains how and why. She was the lady that done the brown eye boy experience, where she separated white people based on their eye colours and showed them why racism exists.
Okay. Bertrack, you're live again.
Sorry, it's just that she touched on very good subjects.
Mm-hmm.
I tell you, I am an advocate. I'm an advocate for a company called Free Seas.
You're advocate for a company called what? Sorry?
Free Seas. The Free Seas.
I hardly hear you there.
Yeah, the Free Seas. And this company
Mm-hmm.
is a care company that is one branch where the care support workers taking people out, disabled people out to socialise. There's another branch where it's a regional it's a forum where basically tries to get people out of assessment and treatment units.
Yeah.
Free Seas. Am I loud
Free
and clear?
Seas. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Am I loud and clear now?
Yeah. We just have listened to you on the repeat in the background. So if you hear your voice repeating, doesn't matter about it.
Yeah.
It's for our purposes here, yeah? Okay, go on.
Yeah. And basically, this company, there's a carer sport group that takes people out, like care agencies, and they take them out to sort of socialise in the community. There's another side of it where they have forums, which I go to in the council building in Westminster Bridge Road. And basically what we all do, is we sit down on the table and we try to help and go to other places as well, like big events, to trying to put our views across to get people out of assessment and treatment units, disabled people out. And basically we try to put them back into the community to get supported living and this and that, to have socialising. Also, prior to that, the second place I go to is the university, South Bank University, and I do basically interviews last time, about a week ago on the 21st of November. It was 3 people, me, there was an Irish gentleman, and there was 2 ladies, and I was the only one that has a disability, and we interviewed 3 people, 3 candidates that want to be nurses, interviews for adult nursing. And basically we sent their presentations. After when they went, we gave them marks and this and that. So we do different things in South Bank University, basically giving my experiences of, what I went through and this and that. And it's the People's Academy that I work for. And that is a great trust. So I'm trying to help my side of the things. This is for all people that are registered into disabled, registered like with learning disability, mild autism, just like myself. And prior to that, I go to many other groups like Solution Speaking Up. I go because our sub group has closed down. So I'm an advocate as well as a lecturer teacher in university to speak out for people that are disabled like me. And there's a lot of situations now where it's not just about psychotherapy, it's about also giving people help, because people seem to now, their help is being cut.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. To austerity, that they cut the help that they, as Caprice was saying, there's nothing in place, and I've always said that in terms of healing. What I was going to say to Caprice was that we shouldn't wait on them to put it in place. I don't think they're going to do that, but we can. This is the reason why we have this discussion today. See whether, and I'm sure that's why she's got her organisation. We'll see whether she can help put into place the plan, at least the skeleton or the foundation, so that we can get to start to heal. This is the thing.
And also, I tell the Sister Caprice about this, that I keep listening. Obviously, you might think sometimes what he says is not right, but I listen to you, and sometimes when I go to sleep, the shows of you that you did in the previous thing. And I also listen to this young man, a very nice man called Ghetto Oli. And basically, they cut back. They keep cutting back. The only time you never had those cutbacks was when the Labour Party, at the time, in the early 70s, 80s, kind of early, very early, when you had that cutback. But look at it now. Because they destroyed the Labour Party by putting these people in, the Labour Party is actually now gone. Now, they're just conserved like everybody else. Now people are saying, hold on a minute, the only hope is the Green Party, but they will never get in. The only hope is this person, he will never get in. Because now they've cut back. Also here in the 80s now, I think she lived back in the 70s or 80s. She might know, but it's good. Yeah. Back in those days, people, you know the racist people, they used to come and hail. You know what hail? They learnt that hailing from the rascals, where they used to say this man's a peaceful. And when you did a crime, or when somebody was in a situation crying, when somebody was in crying, in crying, tears, basically they used to come in the 70s and say, what's up, what's wrong? You know? Now, people don't even help anymore. People don't give a damn anymore. Leave you. You understand what I mean? There used to be, even though back in the 70s it was, there was something disadvantage, but back in your time, Heru, remember there used to be more friendly people used to come and share the bath together and things. Now people are too comfortable, and it's not like, basically, the doctors have changed. Look at the NHS doctors now. They would just report everything, or they would not come to your place. I was in pain one time, I'll give you an experience. I had depression pressing on my stomach. I went to this place called Orchard. It was a lovely caravan holiday. And I saw these two girls in the pool. They were nice and things. But I couldn't have the courage to talk to them and say, I love you, this and that. So when I came back from Orchard, I came to the place and I was living in the flats then, and basically all of a sudden pain started to press me, and it was so much depression. The doctor came and I was crying. He said, there was a doctor from the GP. He said, what's up? What's wrong? Even though you might think, well, he's white, and people said, he's racist, this, that. They were misjudging him. But he was a nice, lovely doctor, and said, I'm going to give you this tablet called Zotan. The depression will press out of you. Also, he told my mum to feed him some like fruits and this and that or take him out to places, which the depression pressed until early 2004. And sometimes it was pressing me since 2006. I was crying all because I've never had like a girl and everything like that. So different issues have come up. And as a person, as a young person, I'm trying to say, well, when I've gone through this, one day I can come and explain to you, like, as in eloquently, what I as a person is going through. Because people started to say, oh, it's roses, it's lovely, it's beautiful, it's roses, what he's going through. So I'll leave you at that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah? Thank you very much for that, Bertrack. Okay.
And what does the sister think about it?
Well, she's been listening. Okay, then thank you for that. Yeah. Okay.
Right, sir.
Enough respect. Bless. Let me call you back. Right. So coming up next, after the sister's finished, you're listening to Feferity Radio, your nostalgic station. You can call us on 0730 541 7668, and I repeat, 0730 541 7668. You're in tune to Feferity Radio. Now, coming up next after us is 0K speaking to documentary
filmmaker.
Oh, you can read that out.
Yeah, so coming up next after this is 0K speaking to documentary and filmmaker Caroline Deed. Sorry,
right.
I'm making mistakes now. Caroline.
Caroline.
So Caroline Deed, yes.
Yeah, let's get back to what we're talking, because it's very interesting. So I'm thinking to myself now, I've been experienced in Britain. No one can tell me about Britain. I've been here for what? Oh, geez, that was 60 years.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So really...
Yeah, you got something on me there.
I should have an opinion about... Some of these people just come from Jamaica the other day and thinking that they know everything about it. Britain.
Yeah.
They know about all of this. So, what we got in the community... That's why I said to you, when I go to the councils, I see a lot of Africans in the council.
Yes.
You see like our Angel Town.
Oh, yes.
Right? Bare Africans are on the council board.
Yeah.
So...
We've been climbing the ladder.
We have. So, and who's going to kick you out of your house?
But let me tell you something. And this is the subject that I've recently spoke of. Even though it's a little bit, it's still related because we're being traumatized by a system still. But it's quite sensitive, but this is something that, because of my own experiences and things that I've been going through, I've noticed. But what I said and why I brought up the lady, the activist Jane Elliott, is because she will tell you, and this is a Caucasian woman that speaks against her own people in their ignorance and their attitude, and by saying we are a racist nation. And racism does exist. It exists so easily, and she showed it even by just doing the experiment, the blue eye, brown eye experience. So for those that don't know, do research and look up Jane Elliott. You'll be surprised and amazed to see that she's doing some great work in helping to educate white people of their racism. I mean, I wish she would come here more often. I mean, she's an elderly lady now, but I wish she would come here more often, for her work is mainly in America. She has been here back in the 90s, I believe. But Jane speaks of the racism, and she even shows them where the racisms come from. And even by having a conversation with them about racism, they build up this defense straight away, which shows they are actually racist. And the way that she does it is so...
Let me just take it on. So we agree there's a group that is actually racist. Now, which group isn't?
Well, I don't think there is. I think there are many racist groups or people that have racism, but prejudices as well. And I think we can have them a little. It's healthy to have, certain prejudices.
I mean, patriotism.
It's about choice. Yeah.
Right. So we talk about trauma. Do you realise that the Caucasoid group, I call them, are very traumatised? One, because they're melanin recessive.
Yes.
And going back again, if it's generational trauma, when what we did to them in Africa, albinos, right, and they are the descendants of, they are the mother and fathers of what we call white people now, the African albino, that exited Africa and lived better in Europe, and began to go through climatic changes, phenotype changes, beaky nose, to survive the ice age. Yes. You understand what I mean? So it's the one human that's manifested into many.
Yes.
You understand? So when it comes down to trauma, they look at us and they said, well, the way you treated us back in the day, it's passed down through our genes. That's why we fear you. We did actually, because I know that the Caucasoids used to cower before us. Yeah. When they were still crawling on all fours, we were walking upright in silk. They were still, we civilized them. Yeah. So when we took them away out of their bestiality, we actually still colonized them. You understand? Right. So they grew up with this. They knew how we treated their parents in Africa long time ago.
Right. So is it not just a cycle? Is it not just a part of the cycle? Right. And this is why I ain't got time to be preying and making so much noise about the past.
True.
Because it's his story of it. I wasn't there.
It's our story
I
too.
know. Yeah.
So you know what I mean?
There's only so much I'm going to say by saying our story is our history, in the sense that, like I said, I wasn't there. So I'm being mindful in the here and now only because I don't want to take up too much more trauma and put so much more on my mental state, through my mental activity. Right. And that's why I'm not disowning, but I'm separating myself from that trauma. From that trauma, because
so why are you doing that then? Why are you separating yourself?
In some sense, maybe because that's a defense mechanism of mine, in one way of protecting myself. Because if I walked around thinking and being and feeling the way that I did maybe 20 to 25 years ago, based on race and our response to Caucasians that are racist. I remember growing up, and I always felt it was quite interesting because even, when I was a driving instructor, I don't know why it was, but I think it just from a place of energy and, just thinking, why every time I was always being verbally abused by white men. That was my experience. And it wasn't until when I really looked at that and I felt maybe because that's how I feel about them. That's how I feel about them, because I've been subjected to certain things, and I'm attracting that to me because of how I feel. Because it wasn't Caucasian women, it was the man. because we've been told that white man did this, white man did that. Yeah, I know. Do you know what I mean? And I was putting myself through that trauma, reliving that. Right. Because let's have it. I've never been abused. Well, I have, verbally by a white man, but not physically.
Yeah, Dog, that's what I'm saying to you. So right now, if you as a therapist, because I've always said it, if they can show me, somebody professional like yourself could show me that reliving the trauma 24/7 like that is towards psychological healing. I don't know, because I mean, we might as well been there. You said, and I say too, that we've never actually been there, but we may as well been.
Well, we're putting ourselves there, aren't we?
You know what I mean?
We're putting ourselves there, like 600, 700, 800 years ago. We put ourselves in that place by taking ourselves and giving us that experience
of
of course. And this is why, for me, it has to stop to a certain extent. Those that want to be the ambassadors that go out there and get reparations for slavery can still do that, but we need to stop talking about, we need to start healing those elements, and the only way that we're going to do that is by re-educating people. Re-educating the Caucasians, as Jane Elliott would say. That's the only way that it can be done, and it can take some time. Yeah, it could probably take some time, because you're talking about a lot of ignorance generations. And then, as time goes on, it's like a diseased or a sick tree. Maybe you cut part of it down or you treat it, and then it's going to take a few years. Or
a fish in a pond. If the fish is sick,
it's
you take the fish out
water.
And you heal the fish and you put it back into the pond, and it's sick again.
It's always going to be sick. It's the pond.
You need to change the water.
Right, exactly.
And you've got some people are taking advantage of the emotionalism, and even selling Africa to us in business level. They're making it's a conflict of interest. If you're going to make a business out of our trauma, it's not very nice, is it? You can't be selling.
Because I've heard of many people going back to Africa as Caribbean or the diaspora, historical Africans, and not having a great experience.
Right, just traumatized.
Well, traumatized, but who said Africa wants us?
This is what I'm saying.
Who said Africa
and why
wants
should
us?
they? I mean, the trauma happened to Africa as well. Don't forget,
exactly.
It happened to.
Yeah.
Her people were taken away from her. It's not only us as a group, diaspora happened to us and us only. Therefore, we can dictate to Africa where she should be in this moment in time. Right. It's not for us as diasporans, so-called, because the AU don't really call us diasporans. When they refer to diasporans, they're referring to Africans of 50 years ago that have left Africa 50 years ago and are now sending money back to the continent. So let me just give you the numbers one more time. Call us on 07305417668, and I repeat, 07305481768. We bring it into the studios. You can also text on that number. You're listening to Feferity Radio and your host, your nostalgic station. And again, coming up next, it's going to be Zero K.
Yeah, Zero K.
Zero K speaking to documentary fair. Is that
filmmaker?
Yeah, documentary filmmaker. And
am I going to have to get you some glasses?
Yeah, I think so. I've got them here.
You need to go Specsavers.
I think I need to go and get my eyes. Put my glasses on anyway.
But yeah, so
Caroline Deed.
That's it.
Yeah. So back to you now. What do you recommend?
I'm going to go back a little bit, because obviously my subject is trauma. We started with childhood trauma. We've ended up on the slavery syndrome. Syndrome, and we kind of want to home in a little, because as I said, one, we want to be able to understand what trauma is, and not many people do. Yeah. Or, like I said, I think it has to be.
I made a mistake on the number. I said 4.
Should I read it for you?
Yeah, you do.
Do you know what? This is not actually funny. I'm going to tell you a story. When I first became a radio presenter on a station in Birmingham, which is a very big community radio station, I went there to do something somewhat like this, and the gentleman at the time, he's now passed. His name was Mahtab Khan, and he was at Khan. Yeah, it was Khan, and he was actually partially blind, going blind. And I know that's not the case for you, but I remember.
I don't know about that.
No, it's not probably not the case for you. He just needs to put his glasses on.
Right.
He has a
I don't
choice.
like wearing glasses.
But literally, you know, Mahtab struggled, you know, seeing things on the CD. He would have it like there with his glasses, and he was actually going. And that's how I got my job.
Really?
Because one of the reasons, you know, my voice and stuff like that. But I remember speaking to him, and he, next time, you know, come, you know, and we did. We jammed for over a year. Yeah.
Okay,
So yeah.
So you want to read that?
Yeah, very nice. So yeah, you're listening to Feferity Radio. Feferity. Now I've got it now. I was just going to read the number.
Yeah, that's right.
Feferity Radio.
Feferity.
Yeah, Feferity Radio, your nostalgic station. With Heru and myself, Caprice. And the number to call is 07305 417 668. So again, 07305 417 668.
Okay. Now,
And coming up next is 0K speaking to you, the documentary and filmmaker Caroline Deed.
Right on. So as you were saying, very interesting point you're going to make.
Yeah, so going back to the trauma, I'm thinking, have I forgotten now?
No, you was going to refer to somebody who's, that lady was talking about.
Okay, yeah, it will come back to me. So I was going back to speaking of trauma on just a small scale and identifying what trauma is.
That's right.
I know that my story will come back because there was a valid point that I would like to make. But again, you know, when we're out there, you know, we're thinking of the different levels of trauma, you know, homing it in. This is something that I feel very close to my heart. And childhood trauma is one of my favourite subjects, more than, you know, post-traumatic slavery
syndrome,
for the reasons, and, you know, the main reasons. Because no matter what disorder it is or what trauma it is, it's still a trauma. It has to be dealt and seen in this way.
Can we use the method to heal the post-traumatic slave syndrome? Whatever you could do.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And I think, first of all, you need to understand what trauma is. So like earlier I said, trauma in general can be defined as a psychological or emotional response to an event that is deeply distressing or disturbing. And remember, we're all individuals, so we assess that on different levels based on our own self. So when we are traumatized, as we said, it lets off all those different hormones within the body, chemical responses that come from the brain. And as we know, our nervous system, cells, all cells in the body, whether it's skeletal, blood, lymph, muscle, you know, they hold memory.
Wow.
And this is where the trauma
powerful,
is then embedded. Because if you respond in a negative, way, or has a negative impact on you, you're going to respond to that. Now, many people don't know that because, like I say, you can have that happen. You think, okay, everything's fine. You might be feeling a little low mood from the experience, so shock being one of them. And then after that, you've got all these other emotions that then come and take play every time something's triggered about that trauma. You know, you could just see it as simple as burning yourself with the kettle. Every time you go to the kettle, you're apprehensive of picking that kettle
of course you are.
And I had a situation like that with a hot water bottle earlier on this year where, by accident, the hot water bottle opened and scolded me very badly. For most of my friends and family know, I could show you pictures, you probably wouldn't like it. And once the scar healed, I was left with this emptiness and feeling a certain kind of way. And I was really much expressive in telling people that, nah, man, the scar's gone and I'm able to move. And,
but it scarred your mind.
But it scarred my mind. Like this, I actually kept looking at the scar and thinking,
still there.
You should be there. Because why am I feeling like this? You've gone. I shouldn't be feeling no way at all now. But evidently, of course, I'm going to. I'm traumatized. And the reason why that trauma was so deep rooted for me, and I remember after having the burn and the heal, when the scar healed or the wound healed, I was just left there like often thinking, wow, why do I feel like this? I felt a bit vulnerable, you know, and it took me back to a place where I was like maybe 6, 7 years old, and I actually scolded myself very bad as a child in in my local home area at the time, which was again in Lambeth. I was living in Stockwell, and I remember just feeling as though I was that child again.
Oh,
it really did knock me for six, because I remember just keep saying, why would this happen to me in my age now? You know, I'm all, you know, I felt so unfair. I felt so angry at the same time that this could be happening to me.
Yeah.
At this point in my life, I was traumatized, and I'm there thinking, but actually, Caprice, this is nothing in compared to what some people go through by way of accident, where they've had half of their cranium crushed, or, you know, their foot. I mean, listen, we're a traumatized nation, and I'm being very mindful.
A traumatized world, don't you think?
Yeah, well,
race.
Yeah, definitely, human race. And so this is why I say, people, be gentle with yourself. There's no need to be racist. There's no need to have these prejudices if we don't have to. We have a choice. But you see the trauma that we inflict on ourselves, that's another type of trauma. Because we put ourselves through a type of trauma. When we don't like something, we talk about it so much. Oh, we don't like this, we don't like that. Well, isn't that putting yourself through a bit of trauma?
Well, I think,
you know, because you're revisiting what
right.
you don't like.
All right.
And that's why I don't like the slavery scene.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, you know, it's no problem revisiting that, but it's how you
revisit it
and what you take from that.
Yeah.
I mean, really and truly, when I visit myself in the version of myself in the past, I'm actually giving life to that, to myself at that time, and I can change the past. You know.
Yes.
You know that?
Yeah.
When I visit the past to change it, not to indulge in it. And try to relive
and
it.
that's the thing, because now we're going on to something else, and we're talking about, from where I'm saying you're speaking of changing it, we're talking about a different vibration. So we're going into that spiritual realm of looking at healing. And for me, as a holistic therapist, that is just exactly it. There's 3 aspects for me: mind, body, and soul. You have to heal all 3 of those in order for me to heal. Now, I recently done a bit of research, and a gentleman called Laverne, it's going to come to me, Peters, I believe. And this gentleman talks about, he does a treatment which is called the somatic pendulum experience. Wow, it's amazing. As I said, my work is really good. You know, at the moment, as I said, I'm doing voluntary work for the charity Faces in Focus. They're a charity that offers counselling to young and mature people.
Contact details?
Yeah, so the contact details for them, the website is www.faces, plural with an S, in focus.org.uk. So that's facesinfocus.org.uk. And again, they're amazing in the work that they do. It's great to be around so much like-minded people. As I said before, I met and know 2 of the counsellors there through my studies at Roehampton University when I was studying integrative counselling. And again, you know, they have just kind of helped to be there in my questionings and my experience of what is happening for me.
So anybody can come to you if people generally, even young folks, are
young folks. I mean, if there are any young people listening out there, by all means, you know, self-referral is the best type of referral. So if you feel that something's wrong with you emotionally, and your behaviour has been depleted, or you're acting out emotionally and you don't understand what's happening to you, you're very emotional, you can call in. And, you know, I can advise you on what you could do, but also to be in contact with Faces in Focus themselves as a self-referral to get help. Maybe you're suffering at school through bullying. Maybe it might be at home. If things are getting a bit too much, there's a bit of breakdowns at home. Or, again, you're struggling with schoolwork. Or maybe you're partaking in criminal activities. And what we don't realise is, and want to come out, all gang-related stuff as well. And
How about trap houses?
Yeah, and what we don't realise is the trauma that we're faced in subjecting ourselves through these life experiences as young children and young people. And I did it myself, like I said, I was a young youth, out there, we want to go out and we do this and, and it's only now I'm like, oh my gosh, why would I do that to myself? Why did I go there? Why did I put myself in there? Did you see what happened to, and some of it, like I say, can be prevented. Prevent is better than cure, they say, right?
Yeah, I'm feeling sorry for some of these young folks who are going through like trap houses where they've been taken to work and given like trainers.
Let me tell you, I see a couple of them every day. Really? And I'm one of these ambassadors for young people. I'm not afraid of them. I was young myself one time, so I have an overstanding, and I can come down to their level just to get them to have an over or an understanding, should I say? And so for me, I challenge young people in a way that's conducive to their lifestyle, and their style. Because even when, I've challenged them, they'll go, oh, yes, miss, or yes, and I say yes, and they'll go, look, you make a joke, you make it humorous. So you want to be nice, sharp, and sweet with them and tell them, listen, we don't put up with that here, but this is why, and again, as I was saying, for all of you young people out there that you are having a troubled time, then, you need
someone to talk to.
You need someone to talk to. Then you could give us a call here on 07305 417 668. And again, Faces in Focus, their website is www.facesinfocus.org.uk, and the telephone number is 0207 403 244. So again, that is 0207 403 244, and that's Faces in Focus counselling for everyone across the board. But what the charity does offer and why it's charitable is low cost counselling for young people and adults, young people ages between 11 and 25, and it's not to say younger people can't have counselling, but before the age of 11, when you think of it psychologically, they haven't fully developed and may be able to express themselves in that way. So you do have child therapy or, therapists that do deal with child psychology. It's a little bit different because they engage with them in therapy through play. So through playing, through toys, to just determine what's going on for them. Whereas the child might not be able to express themselves and talk about and be able to reflect back. So it's slightly different with younger people. But again, really interesting and really important. And as I said, I was saying, touching on what you spoke of earlier, where you're talking about, what did you call the trap houses?
Yeah, trap houses.
Listen, this thing is really kind of uncomfortable for me and quite disturbing, because every day when I'm out there, I don't know why, I notice everything. It's like my friend said to me yesterday, Irish, she says, Caprice, you and your senses, I can taste this, I can smell that, I can feel that. Yeah, man, I'm an empath, and I've been feeling the pain for our people for a long time, and this is why I'm saying we need to rise up and help to heal each other through that pain. And the only way that we can do that is through honesty, through integrity, through compassion and empathy, and just re-educating ourselves as to what is right and good for us, but based on the information that we take in, what we're absorbing, what we're subjecting ourselves to. It's like certain things on TV. If I know that's going to impede on my mental health, I don't watch it.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to watch things about murders and things like that before I go to my bed.
It's only somebody who would want to manipulate somebody through their emotions would actually put them through that. Because I can't understand how we keep visiting slavery in a sense without any resolution.
Right.
It's all right to visit it, but you got no
But then
result.
you got to think as well, when we are traumatized, like all these people that are out there and doing that, they haven't dealt with their trauma, and that's why they're going out. Do you know there's a very big term that I've been using recently, and even when I spoke to somebody about some trauma that I've recently been going through, and she said to me, and it's been my favourite punchline for the whole month, hurt people. Yeah?
Really?
Yeah. Not all, and not in every case, but most hurt people will go forward and continue to hurt people.
So the abused become the abuser.
Yes, exactly. And I remember a lady called Tammy Papperman. She's a US lady. She speaks of really some deep stuff. We're talking about, the sovereign stuff, and and she speaks of her family's experience. She actually is living underground because they tried to do so many things to her. But she speaks of this, and she speaks from a voice of most people. When you come into this life, you're either a victim, an abuser, or a criminal. That's
else?
What the state want. No, the state knows you as one of those three things.
That's all they know you as?
Yeah,
Nothing else?
Well, everyone's going to be abused in one way or some sort. Yeah. Whether it's bullying, whether it's we're all abused. We all suffer some form of abuse.
We're all victims, and we all always abuse. Also the abusers.
Yeah.
Because I mean, to me, when we talk about slavery and the reliving of the past and actual reliving again, actually, as I said to you, we might as well have been hung by a poplar tree and smell a magnolia.
Well, I'm telling you, because I felt like I had
have our
been.
ghoulies cut off and all that, and our bellies open.
Yeah.
We might as well have had it, because we've actually put ourselves. So the answer to that, what's the answer to the beginnings then of the foundations of laying for the healing process? What would be your advice and method? Because we want to start a healing group.
Well, I definitely think it's a collective thing, so it has to be done on a group collective. We need those that, those role models in the community that have the power to educate from the healing perspective of understanding what the mind and body is. So taking you back, and really, I think the only way that it could be done is by exploring nature first, which we are.
That's right,
exploring ourselves, our minds and our bodies, and understanding what processes work, how the body works, and then kind of breaking that down into bite-sized chunks, because then you're able to address and deal with the trauma and understand how that trauma has been embedded.
If you understand
the nature of humans, biology.
So let's talk about the brain for a minute. Now, I know that the hypothalamus is the right. When we talk about a reptilian brain, everyone has a brain stem.
Yes,
and we share that with reptiles. It's not that we are reptiles, but in the reptile, that makes up the whole of the brain, just the stem in the reptile. Then you got the mammal, the mammalian. Comes up on the that covers the reptilian.
Yeah.
Then you got the hypothalamus that covers that.
That's it.
That's where we're more human.
Yes.
Because you've never seen a snake look after its young.
No.
It just pees them out and that's it, left them. Crocodile may look after, because it's more mammal, isn't it?
Yes.
Because crocodile very careful with his young. He can put it in them big jaws of his, and he gently picks up his young.
Yeah. Well, it's no different from us, so
the mammalian. So that makes up more in a crocodile. Then you have the hypothalamus in humans now.
Yes.
You know what hypothalamus does? They put it this way: if you say you were driving one day and somebody runs out in front of you, and you just put the brakes on,
emergency stop,
before you hit him or her, then everything's okay. You say, all right, sorry about that, baby, and they go your way. But halfway down the road, you stop and think, hang on a minute. Suppose they hit him.
Well, exactly.
Then you see ambulance, you see police.
And all of that, and the mind starts playing over on you, negative trauma.
So your hypothalamus is scrambled to fight or flee, because your brain can't tell the difference between a real or imagined events.
Yeah, just like the subconscious can't tell the difference between, it doesn't understand negatives.
That's right.
It doesn't understand negative. This is what I'm saying. So how can we overcome these issues that we have? Teach yourself. You need to understand exactly how the brain works, what it does, what is the central nervous system, the parasympathetic, the autoimmune, all of those things you need to understand, because then when you understand that and look at how trauma affects that, because if you're a young child and you're having adverse childhood trauma or certain levels of trauma, you are not going to develop some of those cells properly, and that is what's impeded on. And then you pass it on to your children and so on, and that's how the cycle is revisited. Now, talking of the hypothalamus, that's why I did one of the studies that I recently did, which was an aromatherapy course, to kind of understand how we can use aromatherapy to engage with the hypothalamus, because that's where it responds to. When we smell essential oils, it helps the hypothalamus, and then this whole process is happening within the body that helps to relieve the stress or certain symptoms based on the chemical components within the oils. So we have oils that help with nervine or your nervous system. We have oils that help with depression, so oils like ylang ylang, lavender, marjoram, very good for depression. And these are things that you can use as aids to help you through your trauma. And this is really important. So if anyone is wanting more information on that, again, you can contact myself, Caprice, on 07380 321 335. So again, that's to contact myself, Caprice, for any advice on aromatherapies, mental health or trauma that you're facing, or anything you want to share. Then you can call me on 07380 321 335. Now, it is important, one thing to engage in certain activities that are conducive to your mental health and well-being. And this is something that me, myself, and my colleague Letitia promote in the community, and why we are very much on the grassroots doing community work. And we're going to be doing an event this Saturday coming. This event is free for everybody. It's at the Stockwell Trust Centre, which is at, I always forget how to say this word, Aytone Road.
Aytone Road.
Yeah, Aytone Road, which is off Robsart Street in Stockwell. And it's the Trust. It's a nice state-of-the-art community centre they built on Stockwell Park Estate, where I was born and bred, actually. And we will be holding a very fun day. It's called the Wellbeing Workshop Collective. And on that day, we're going to have many activities that are free. It is for families and children. It is for the rich and the poor. We do not we do not separate or say that everybody can come, and it's free. The only thing that we say is if you come, you bring something to share. So that might be a bottle of pop, it might be some food or something like that. And that's that thing brings us together. We got something to share. We can sit, we can have a talk. You can ask as many questions as you want with the people that are going to be there. We're going to have hula hooping with Sarah, which we thought is a very fun thing. Sarah's a yoga teacher, so she talks about mindfulness, yoga, breathing, all of these things are activities and things that we should engage in to help with our healing through trauma and other things like that. And so we'll be doing hula hooping for adults and children, and believe me, it's fun. Have you seen grown men hula hoop? Or and people make efforts that they used to do as a child. It is just fun. And you know what, laughter is good in this, as well, because this lets off certain chemicals within the body that help to heal as well. So having fun is really important for us. We have the Wellbeing Drumming, which is by the amazing Heru Sista Gina.
Doula.
Yeah, she's a doula.
Birth thing.
Yes, so she's she helps to give birth. Yes, midwifery, but more of the native, and more of our Nubian kind of setting. And she does.
Sister Hortense listen, because she's a doula as well.
Oh, good. Yeah. And she does amazing drumming for well-being. And I know for any of my friends that are listening now that I've introduced you to Gina, I mean, I was there last night, and we were having a good.
Was down at the Sun.
Yeah, she was at my event on Sunday.
That drumming, it was quite
powerful,
very
really therapeutic,
really good.
And the natives, and very much her being a Moor, know and believe that is one of the main ways of healing Nubian people is through drumming. And believe I got so much yesterday when I went there and I started drumming, and amazing. When I first got to their classes, I thought, I can't drum, but I used to play the steel bands. So of course I should be able to, but just allowing the energy to flow and not thinking about what we should be doing. Are we doing it right? Or you just let it flow. And believe me, I think I'm the best drummer in the world now.
Well, I'm telling you what. I tell you what, sis. It's so good that you're not playing on our emotions. So I mean, you're trying to heal our emotions.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
We're playing on people.
Yeah, I'm not trying to fatigue or
provoke
anyone.
Yeah, trying to negatively influence people.
Yeah.
I mean, What's the reaction to our political stance? I mean, now that we're not healed, once healed, do you think
we'd be much better as a nation? Race won't be the main thing on our agenda, which I'm kind of bored of now, because I know people have got prejudices in race, but we just need to show and teach them better. Because I mean, let's have it. You know, regardless of what, when you're talking about race, you might not like that, but then it's not going to stop you from eating cultural food, is it? You're still going to have a curry. You're still going to. Do you see what I mean? So again, let me just go back to giving those details for Gina. So if you're interested in drumming for well-being, then you can contact them on their website, and it's www.shamha vibrations. So Shamha spelled SHAMHA vibrations.co.uk. So that's www.shamha vibrations.org.uk, and she will also be there on the 7th doing drumming for well-being. We've got myself and Letitia doing holistic therapies. I will be doing a little bit of tribal face painting for the children so they can be actively involved in drumming. And then we also have some art, and we have the lovely Michelle who will be doing textiles and stuff like that. So do come down on this Saturday, the 7th, at the 8 Home Road, Stockwell, the Trust Community Centre. And that will be from 12 till 5 p.m. So it's 5 days, free fun activities and play for healing. Then we have my event, which is on the Sunday, which is called Expressions. We call it Expressions, bring it to the mic, and it's called Expression because it's a way of expressing yourself through poetry, spoken word, music, or just by bringing a pitch to the stage, or if you have something that you'd like to share valuably, it might be an experience, it might be your healing or your own healing. You can then come to that event. We're looking for musicians, artists, poets, all sorts of, lovely, creative expressions to help create awareness around mental health and well-being. And Heru came and again, it's a beautiful setting. It's at the Son of Camberwell, because I forgot to give you the address. It's at the Son of Camberwell pub.
That's Cold Harbour Lane,
Cold Harbour Lane, on the corner of Caldecott Road. So it's the road that all roads lead to King's College Hospital, but we are there, and that is this coming Sunday, the 8th of December. So 2 great days for you. The 7th at Stockwell Trust Community Centre, free for everybody. Bring the children, bring the family, all ages welcome. And then the 8th, which is at the Son of Camberwell on Caldecott Road, a corner, and that is Expressions. We are allowed children up to a certain time, till about 9:30. But again, after that, and I say be mindful, because I love children being there, because I'm up for children, learning and everything. But then what is quite challenging, as I noticed, some of our artists and their poetry and their material does have a lot of material that might not be suitable for children's ears. But at the same time, so be mindful of that. But if you're open to your children and they're at an age where you feel that it's that time where they should just be real and hear the realness of it all, then bring them along. We're happy to have them. So just before, is there anything else that I can mention with regards to healing? Yes, mindfulness. Please go out there and learn what that's about. Mindfulness is such an important part to play in healing, and being mindful of yourself, being mindful and aware of your body and the changes that it goes through. Even with dealing with trauma, when you think of trauma and the responses that you might have for when triggers go off, you feel that in your body. It's something that you could feel and identify. Whether you're feeling scared, as I mentioned earlier when I got that term, scared.
That's right, yeah.
And so on. So be mindful, meditate. People always say they have struggles with meditating. I don't know what they expect from meditation, but it's this. It takes time, and you need to be gentle with yourself. Of course, thoughts and that are going to come to your mind. I don't know who ever told people that meditating meant your mind needed to be blank. It's about taming your mind. So things will come to your mind, and you pay and acknowledge what is what's there and accept it and allow it to pass.
Yeah, ignore it. Yeah.
You cannot try. You know when you say, "Oh, I don't want to think about that. I don't want to think about that." You're going to keep thinking about it because you're trying to
fighting
do the opposite against
the mind, the nature of the mind. Thoughts come in independent of you and I.
Yes.
We can't stop thoughts or emotions coming in our sphere of awareness, but you can ignore them.
Yeah.
Once you acknowledge them, you can transcend them. This is the whole idea. So, I'm thinking to myself, the process of healing begins with yourself. And yourself is important. And I don't like to know that people are being dragged through the streets in the sense of emotions that they can't handle. This is our young people not able to handle conflict properly, amicably. How to deal with conflict
resolution.
Yeah, you don't shoot or stab somebody because they've done something to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. My heart goes out to these young people because, like I said, I was once young, and I'll be sharing a bit more with you in the future. Hopefully, Heru has me back.
Yeah, man.
As I said, and this is why it's so important, because later on in life, if you're young and you're having a very violent or stressful or traumatized time, this will affect you when you're older. Hence why, I've said how it affected me. And believe me, it made me, one, my autoimmune system didn't develop properly. So I have autoimmune conditions.
Wow. Yeah.
I've found that out recently, and that's all down to finding out about me having the symptoms of PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. And it makes so much sense. For every time something traumatic, even from having surgery, was very traumatic for me.
I just had my teeth out yesterday.
Right.
That's
and that
traumatic.
brought up trauma.
Oh,
right, exactly.
my Lord.
That brought up trauma for me. And, noticing the signs. So being slightly depressed, not in the mood, your eating habits, and then behaviour. If something just triggers you like that and you go from 0 to 100,
there's some behaviours you can't understand, innit? Some people that makes you wonder.
But even though I think as a society, we're against people responding in anger or being upset or being low. And that's why we see it as, they've got mental health or they've got something wrong with them. No, they are just human, and they're dealing with everyday human, things, and they're responding to it. Now, we sometimes have a choice, but we don't always have a choice. And I used to get told, you should know how to behave. You should. Well, no, I do know how to behave, but then my body and all the processes that it's going through and the things that's going off in my brain will cause me to behave a certain way unconsciously without knowing. And it's not always can be controlled unless you're aware of that and you accept that and you're willing to work through that as well. Right. And some people, like we said, most people with trauma, what don't they want to do? They don't want to talk about it. And that's fine because we've got silent therapy. We've got other therapies that you don't need to. We talk
about, let's look at slavery, for instance. We talk about that every day.
Yeah, but why? Because it's easier to talk about something that's negative than something that's positive.
Yeah, for real.
If I was to come in here and go, you know what I achieved this week? What? Me achieved this. I'm so good at that. I'm so good at this. I'm very good. Everybody's just looking at me. Is it really? Oh, look at her blowing her own trumpet. And that's the nation that we come from. It really frustrates me.
Yeah, can't win anyway.
If you're not blowing the own trumpet, I'm going to sit down and wait for the next man over there to blow my trumpet. Nah. Blow your trumpets. Know what you're good at.
Is it a matter of trust? I mean, some people in society I can't trust because... but where does that untrustworthiness come from? That comes again from your experience of trauma. A lot of people have trust issues. Many people have trust issues. That's one of it. When I did the silent therapy and I went into my subconscious and that word came up, scared, where do you think that come from? That's about trust. Scared of what, Caprice? Because I'm looking at myself going, what you scared of? And I'm always looking in the mirror going, and I had to really be honest with myself. And I was scared. I was scared of being hurt. I'm scared of being hurt on so many levels and in so many different ways, and that's being me honest. I don't want to get run over. There's so many things I don't want. Yeah, and they're predominantly in the back of my mind going round, even though I'm not seeing that. Yeah, because when I was younger, we used to ask one another. I come from a family of about 7 or 8. We used to ask each other who's going to die first.
Right, don't we all do that as children? I swear, we did. And listen... And when you think of it, I'm just always like, I better go first. I'm going first. And my sister used to be, why do you want to go first? Because I don't want to have to deal with you. Do you know what I mean? Losing someone. And, fun and joke aside, because we say that. And I had a dear friend of mine pass away a few weeks ago. I've had many deaths. And so you remember when I spoke to you about that photo of me as a child? That time, my uncle, as I said, had passed away.
Okay.
And I felt that vibrations as an empath for my family. And I think it definitely traumatized me or had some effect on me. And then I remember when I was about 13 years old at school, and I kept saying, I don't know anyone that's passed away. I don't, I felt so proud of it. No, I've still got my grandparents. I've still got not really any of my, but then I remembered my uncle and I thought, wow. And for days, it took me to a place of just distress, and I thought, what if my mum died? What if my dad died? And then you kind of go into that as a child, and then lo and behold, I mean, I was much older when my pups passed, because I think I was 25 at that age, and it was quite a traumatizing experience to have to know that your parents gonna leave you in that sense. I mean, I know that if you ask parents, they never want to leave, they never want to bury a child.
That's right,
because that's something else that's very
and that's
traumatizing.
Yeah, my mum buried my younger brother,
Right,
died in a crash in Germany. But again, we handle our emotions, we can, and we shouldn't be afraid to.
No.
Right, and I think the thing is, once we have put that to bed, okay, we understand that we've been enslaved. We don't wear it as a badge of honor, to be enslaved. It's not a badge of honor.
It's nothing to be proud of.
No, and
why do we keep talking about
why
it?
you shout from the highest rafters? I'm a son of a. People say I'm a child of a kidnapped people. Now, why would I want to tell myself that I am a child of the children of the kidnapped people? Also suggesting to myself defeat.
Yeah. And I think we have to be mindful, because I don't want to upset anyone out there thinking, oh, what's this woman talking about? I acknowledge and accept all of those aspects and parts of me and that history that's played out in my ancestors and my generation, and generations before me. Of course I do. But while I'm here living now, I need to know how to move forward. I'm always looking for a solution, because there's always a solution to a problem. And a lot of the time it's that us coming together as communities, doing things for each other, educating each other. And I definitely think the Caucasian race has a lot to be open to, because re-educating them on one is one thing. And earlier you spoke of, this is the interesting part, because we spoke of when you look in a lot of these jobs in the hospitals, in the council and all that, they're all a lot of black people. Yeah. Well, let me tell you something. Don't expect nothing different, Don't expect nothing different just because there are people. Because what I've noticed, and I did expect that a little bit different, but it's not always going to be the case. Why? Because they didn't rewrite the rules. Yeah, they're still working from that prejudice or racism.
But should they, though? This is what I'm saying. Because when you think of it,
they've just been put in a position.
All human groups. If I go to Africa, I'm not going to be able to rewrite their group. Right,
well, you're talking about rewriting the stuff here in the UK.
That's right. So why? But is there such a thing as rewriting? Who
wrote the rules for the Caribbean anyway?
Yeah, because
They did.
Yeah, because we were captured.
Yeah, but then we're not anymore, and we're supposed to be independent on all of these things. But that is not the case, is it? Because they're still making the rules.
Yeah, because this is how I'm saying. So if they, as a colony, like how we had colonies, Africa had a whole heap of colonies,
of course,
and they never rewrite their rules neither. So it's a human triad. Humans meet, they mate, they conquer, they fight, and they dominate one another. This is the nature. First of all, as you said, we have to understand the nature of the human.
Exactly.
Otherwise, we can get frustrated.
There you go.
You know what I mean? Once we understand the nature of a being, this is what they want to do. They want to dominate each other.
Right.
There's no colour involved in there, brethren.
No, right. And I always say, you know what? If we all as children went to one school, and that was the school of human biology, and that's all we studied and learned everything from the cells, every system in the body, we wouldn't have half of the problems we got now.
That's what we used to do back in the day. But when we talk about schooling and brainwash education, there's another thing I can't understand. This brainwash education. What they're
biology and science is the only place you probably can't brainwash, because it has to be factual, isn't it?
But I've been into school here, and I don't see where that education is brainwashed me.
Oh, don't you?
No.
Oh, well, Heru,
Let me tell you why.
Everyone's experience is
let me
their
tell you why.
own.
When I went to school, I didn't learn about why is the best. I learned about
No, you
history.
just didn't learn nothing about black history.
But why should I want to learn something if I'm in a so-called black country?
Yeah.
When we go to Africa,
Right.
because of our experience with the Caucasoid in this time, but when we went to Africa, if we was to go back to Africa back in the day, right, we'll be learning about our various tribes and all that.
Well, yeah, but this is where you say your learning comes into your own
but
hands.
we never tell them that that we gave them what education that we wanted. It's like they're giving us education. When we ruled, because when we ruled, we did the same thing. Yeah. Show us where we didn't give them any brainwash education. We brainwash them.
Every school of FOF, every school of thought, FOF, or every school of FOF is definitely
geared to
the
ruling group.
Well, it's to govern your mind. It has to have you to believe and think this way if you got to do that job or you want to go into that group. It's just like social sciences. It's going to brainwash. That's the theories they've come up with. This is the way that it goes. But then you have the choice to make your decision whether you prefer working that way or, you know what I mean? So even like with I said with counselling, I preferred the humanistic approach. But when I looked into that, it was only because I didn't really feel like at the time I wanted to dig up all the dirt and those seeds that were planted there, that deep-rooted stuff. And that's just the process that I had to go through. That's Freud. Sigmund Freud.
Said you have to go back into
he reckons you did, but let's have a bit.
Let's
just talk a little bit about Freud. Well, he was middle class.
Your brethren.
Yeah, my friends. And again, you know, there was so much in those times that even I remember finding out that he was actually a heroin addict.
A what?
A heroin addict. This is the things that they did back in those days. And so my belief systems wanted to come away from that because I thought, you know, everyone has their thing, but you know what's good for you. You can use certain things like the therapies and so on, and you'll know whether it's working for you or not. I can't tell you that it's going to be, this is definitely going to work. No, it's for you. Remember, the healer is within.
That's the relationship. The relationship between the therapist and the client.
The therapeutic relationship
and the client,
between
the two.
Yeah.
Okay, but so what we want to say here is that we shouldn't look at things so dramatic, dramatic when we talk about, because we can't explain the term brainwash education. Right? What do you mean?
Well, I think what I mean by brainwash is changing your mind to believe something else, isn't it?
Well, okay.
But of course, you have to brainwash someone. If you want them to think and act like a doctor, you've got to teach them.
Of course, so when I go to school, I told you, they say they're going to, that black people, some of these little fringe groups say they want their own schools.
Yeah, but that's important. One of the reasons why we can't is because they don't have our own schools at all.
So yeah, but when we get our own schools, what are we going to teach? Something different?
Well, we're gonna.
What's the curriculum that we're going to be using?
Think about this. All right. Well, let me tell you what I'd have in my school. If I had my own school, my first subject is going to be human biology.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm going to teach anatomy. And I'm
so
going
don't they do that now?
Yeah, but how much of it do you get?
There's only certain people.
And then you've got a choice. Then you choose whether you want to learn it or not.
Same thing.
Yes, but like I said earlier, if you're teaching them from that perspective to understand how their body works and functions, one, we're going to have a lot less health problems. Two, we're going to have a lot less stress.
Yes.
Yeah. The food, dieting, all of those things people
more
can
healthier.
then take into consideration, of course.
And the society doesn't want people to be
Of course,
too
I learned
healthy.
algebra at school. What did that do for me? It didn't help me do anything.
Right. So obviously,
there's
if
certain
you're
subjects.
unless we have our own society,
but we should, and that is
so
why
let's-
you would
why
say
not-
that
why
black
not
people
move-
will say it's brainwashing because it's not our type.
So why
of
don't we
wash.
just move out and go in the desert or something and then start a society there? Why do we have to want to start a society within a society here?
Well, they let you because I mean,
You know?
the one Dr. Malachi York tried that a few years back in Atlanta, didn't he?
Yeah,
building a new civilization,
Right.
set a new Atlanta.
Which I agree.
And what did they do to him?
Right. So,
okay, then.
So they are. So it's like in Africa as well. If you go to Africa and you want to, you can't bring a different society in Africa. The way they have it is like they're going to say, okay, come on and start your thing here.
But you're also not allowed to homeschool your children. It's
What, in Africa?
Here.
Right.
It's a big battle to have to be able to homeschool your children from what I've heard from parents. I don't have much experience of it, but I've spoken to many newborn parents, and that is something they struggle with a lot, with society or the government, the authorities not wanting children to study at home.
Well, the reason why I say that, highlight that, because they've got some little groups that want to take advantage of that point, and they come on your blind side, and they will negatively influence for their own purposes.
Yeah, but you know what I say? Let them be, because
not for liberating purposes.
Yeah, and everyone's, and this is what I'm saying. Intention is always. The should be at the forefront of that. Everyone's intention is going to be different. Some people will only walk about and talk about healing, and some people might have their own views on me, saying I'm contradictory to my own healing because I might not be doing things that are conducive to healing. But you know what? We just have to be mindful. Give ourselves a break. But I'm not the slavery thing. I try not to talk about it much anymore.
There are some societies that tell you if you do, they'll put you to death. For them, in order for them to get over that, they never needed people to keep reminding themselves that they were defeated. You understand? So I say to myself, when I do my spiritual show on Mondays, I talk about the self-divinity or self-realization. You realize yourself can never be enslaved. Our true self can never be enslaved. So if I said I wasn't enslaved, people look at me and say, you're in denial. I'm not in denial.
You're not in denial.
My true self tells me I could
Well,
never.
what did Bob Marley say? Free yourself from mental slavery.
So
that's the worst slavery you can have.
Yeah.
Because I ain't in no shackles right
now.
And no one's got me nowhere whipping, or nothing like that. If I want to, then I can put myself in that place by thinking about it and feeling as though I was there.
That's the danger,
and that's why Bob Marley said, the great Bob Marley said, free yourself from mental slavery. Now, I'm just going to say this Wednesday, the 4th of December, we have freestyle speaks to Lee Jasper, former senior former. Okay, sorry. Former. I think the M's missing a little piece off of him. So the former senior policy advisor on equalities to the then Mayor of London, Ken Livingstone, on matters of the general elections and Brexit relating to black perspective. Now that sounds like a very interesting topic. So remember, that's this Wednesday, the 4th of December. Freestyle will speak with Lee Jasper, former senior policy advisor on equalities, with the Mayor of London, who was then the Ken Livingstone. I forgot about that, man. Remember, time does pass, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We've had two in since then, Boris and then...
Right, so quickly, what's your views on it?
Oh, I don't know. I lived in Jamaica too long. I think I passed on all of this stuff. This stuff goes over my head because here's me on hand wanting to heal the nation and to deal with certain aspects, and they're creating more trauma. So for me, I don't know. I tend to stay out of arguments of this, but it's so deep. But the election is coming up, right? Is it the 12th of December?
Yeah, it's back.
I keep wondering why they keep sending me to hospitals on dates when they're having their Brexits and that. I remember supposed to go to the hospital to have a test on the Brexit, the 31st, and I was like, I ain't going there then. And then I felt traumatized. I'm not going for more trauma. No.
Do you ever vote?
I didn't, but I am going to let you know that I have registered to vote, and I'm feeling quite proud of it. I don't know why. I'm excited.
Because you're participating.
Because I'm participating, whereas I've actually actively said, no, I'm not participating.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah, before, but I feel that it's a time that we rise up and we need to
be in control, and we need to be in positions of importance as well.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, we don't want to be negatively influenced. Don't bother go vote. Once they have a rebel roused you and had you penned in, you're not voting, you're not partaking in society, you're not doing nothing at all.
Right.
What's the use? What we can do? Just have us penned in, sitting there like a stuffed dummy, looking at and complaining about the services that we're not getting.
And
we have nobody in front to really fight for it for us.
And what's quite interesting, I've heard a few talks, like just in travel in transit on the bus and that, of young people really talking about it. And I like that. I like it because their vote matters just as much as ours. And, you know, if they're making those decisions to do that now, then that's exactly what we kind of need.
I think we're kind of old in the tooth. Sometimes we're stuck in our old ways, you know what I mean?
Of course. And that is why the older generation do nothing but hold us in a place of trauma at times. Because if we keep going on about the old stuff and what, you know,
the past.
Because like
500
years. It's not that we're stuck in our ways, it's stuck in our fears.
Come on, man. 500 years ago. I mean, damn, 500 years is a long time
it's
ago.
It's stuck in fear. It was like when my grandmother said to me, we are going to Jamaica, go live, you don't know Jamaica. And it's like, why not? You know, I need, you know, I want to explore, understand my culture. And it shouldn't be because she has an experience of maybe she wouldn't live there. She's there every year. But she wouldn't live there. Why? It's too difficult. It's too rough for you. But, you know, whereas for myself, beautiful experience. And able... Huh?
Would you live there?
I was there 7 years.
And would you live there?
Of course. I would have to have the freedom to go and come. So yes, when you say live there, I would still be living there, but I'm still going to venture the world. I wouldn't stop taking vacations. You know, you're not going to just go there and that's it. You're there all the time. And I think that's where people think mistake. And what better time to have done it when I was young, agile. I was able to get up, go, because a lot of our elders wait till it's too late.
They can't move.
And then they go, and a year or two later they pass because they've left it too late. And you know what? I love my culture, and I was there for all that time I was there. I was able to observe and explore, and they are traumatized in many ways, and definitely with the post slavery.
I mean, look at their money.
Yes, definitely. They're living experience of it because they're still there on the island where it happens. Right. And when I go up to see my tribe, the Maroons, the Cromanti tribe, boy, there is some serious vibrations up there. You know, you're there and you just feel it. You know the oppression and what people go through. The story is still there. It's live. Green. You know, you got my brothers there and that still do the tours. And, you know, they're building up with the Cromanti experience. So if you're interested, you could go online on Facebook, look up the Cromanti experience or Maroon for Portland. You know, my mum was from a place called Ginger House, you know, way up in the valleys. And that's where the Maroons land, you know, they lived. And so, therefore, we live on sovereign land. Yeah, but we're still governed by their rules.
Yeah, but people say the Maroons were a sellout.
They used to be when you speak of the story, you need to know of it. And Nanny Maroon, her brothers were the ones that went and signed the treaty, and so that's why they call them sellout and all that. Look, what was done. We're not there now. And so, therefore, we have to bypass all of that and just move forward with solutions to healing.
Okay. Well, it's been an interesting one. 5 minutes left to go, so we can begin to wind down. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to share? Do you want to give the numbers out and contact numbers?
Yeah, just contact number for myself. Obviously, if you're wanting any advice or you want any kind of therapies, or you might be an authority figure, someone doing community events, and you want us to be there to maybe do talks. We have a talk on trauma, and we do sessions for healing as well, and the wellbeing drama. So Caprice is the name, and the number is 07380 321 335. Otherwise, you can email me at hadvantages, so hadvantages with an S, at yahoo.com. Also, as I said, we're having the event on the 7th at Stockwell Trust Community Centre, 12 p.m. till 5, a day of freeness for everybody. And then the Expressions event on Sunday at the Son of Camberwell.
Interesting. So you will be back here. Feferity Radio, won't you?
Yeah, I'm probably going to be back.
Probably.
Well, I haven't finished. I've got loads
I've
still got loads of stuff to talk about around trauma, so definitely.
So you're definitely going to be invited back here again.
Yeah.
So we can get understanding. People can also, if they didn't get the contact details, can also contact us here at Feferity Radio. We will also pass your number on to them at any time.
Cool.
All right. So it's been a pleasure, as always, and I look forward to interacting with you again, Caprice.
Okay.
Do you want to do that one more time?
Yeah, and coming up next is 0K speaking to documentary filmmaker Caroline Deed. And then do remember this Wednesday, the 4th of December, we have Freestyle who speaks to Lee Jasper, former senior policy advisor on equalities, to the Mayor of London, whose name was Ken Livingstone, for those that remember, on the matters of the general elections and Brexit relating to black perspective.
So you want to say your goodbyes?
Yeah, so thank you very much for those that are out there that's taken the time to listen. If you have been subjected to trauma throughout your life or at any time in your life by another person, an abuser, a parent, then do remember this. It's not your fault. I know that this can sometimes cause things of unworthiness and all those things. You know, it's not your fault, and many of us go through it. Find a solution. There's counselling at Faces in Focus, so you can look us up, www.facesinfocus.org.uk for counselling. And by all means, please, people, be nice, be kind to each other, be mindful, have good intentions, and be the best you can be, you know, in your own healing. But take responsibility for it and get that started.
Okay, thank you very much, Caprice. And don't forget, tomorrow I'll be here. I just had my teeth out yesterday, so
he's traumatized.
I'm very so if I sound like lispy, it's because I had the extractions too. I didn't really want to go, but oh my God, I survived.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking about.
Don't worry, I've got my essential oils here to sort you out after.
All right, so that's good, great.
Yeah,
right, nice one. So I look forward to you linking up with me tomorrow evening on from 7 till 9 p.m. And again, Rise Up Doyle if you're listening, and Steve and the rest of the crew. So the one thing left for me to say, and that is what I always say, and that is, this is Heru saying, I'm out.